the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, Just a Rat or a Sparrow. Soon, with the cooperation of the 4 people, the chess pieces turned into fragments all over the floor. "Let's go," Harry shouted. They quickly passed through the room and came to the 3rd room. There was only an unconscious troll in this room. They did not stay for long, but pinched their noses, held their breath, and entered the next room. When the 4 people came to this room, purple and black flames instantly rose at the entrance and exit of the room, and on a table in front of them, there were 7 strange shaped potion bottles. And next to these potion bottles, there was a roll of parchment. Irina opened the parchment and read the words on it. "Danger is in front of you. Safety is behind you. 2 of us can help you. Drink them. 1 will lead you forward, and the other will send you back to where you came from. 2 of them contain nettle wine, and 3 are killers waiting in line. Make your choice, unless you want to stay here forever. We also provide 4 clues to help you choose. First, no matter how cunningly the poison hides, they are actually standing on the left side of the nettle wine. Second, the contents of the bottles on the left and right are different. If you want to move forward, they will not be useful to you. Third, you will find that the bottles are of different sizes. There is no death hidden in the giant and the dwarf. Fourth, the second on the left and the second on the right, although they look different, they taste the same. Looking at the text inside, Hermione held her chin and said, "Obviously, this is a riddle." Irina said bluntly, "The smallest bottle contains a potion that can pass through the black flame, and the bottle on the far right contains a potion that can go back." Hermione looked at Irina with some surprise. She is worthy of being her best friend. She is so amazing. Harry picked up the smallest potion bottle and frowned. There's only enough potion in it for 1 person, less than a sip. Irina spread her hands and said, "It seems that one of us has to go back. But that's good. We also need someone to go back and notify the professor for support." "That makes sense." Ron nodded. "I'll go to the owlery to write a letter to Professor Dumbledore. Maybe he can rescue us in time." Hermione also agreed. She said, "Then I'll go call Professor McGonagall." But at this moment, Harry picked up the potion on the far right. He frowned again. "But there are only 2 people left in this bottle of potion, which means that 1 person has to be left in this room." Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Irina suddenly said, "Harry, can you show me the potion that passes through black flames?" "Here." Harry handed the smallest potion bottle to Irina without hesitation. "Fireproof potion." Irina approached the bottle mouth, sniffed the smell inside with the fan smelling method, and judged. "Hey," Irina said softly, reaching her left hand into her pocket. "I remember I seem to have some stock." After saying that, Irina took out a small bottle from her pocket. After opening the bottle, the smell inside was exactly the same as that of the fireproof potion. "Irina, isn't your potion class not good?" Harry was a little shocked. Irina rolled her eyes at him and said, "Come on, even if I'm biased and not good at potions, it is still easy to get an E in the final exam." Harry was silent for a moment. After checking the potion in her hand, Irina said with some regret, "Unfortunately, my fireproof potion is only enough for 2 people, which means that 1 of us has to go back to inform the professor." Hearing this, Ron hesitated for a moment and volunteered, "I'll go. I know my magic level is the worst among the 4 of us, so I won't hold you back." Ron picked up the potion on the far right. Irina nodded at him and encouraged him, "Believe in yourself, Ron. In fact, informing the professor is the most important task for us. After all, it is related to whether we can go back alive." Ron nodded vigorously, took the potion, and passed through the purple flames and left. Irina, Hermione and Harry took the fireproof potion and passed through the black flames at the exit. Passing through the black flames, the 3 came to the last room. As soon as he came in, Harry saw Quirrell in front of the mirror averized. "How is it possible? It's really you?" I thought. Harry was incredible. He had always suspected Professor Snape, but after Professor Snape was ruled out, he was unwilling to believe that Quirrell would be the culprit. But unexpectedly, what Irina said was true. "Use that boy. Use that boy." At this time, a voice came from the back of Quirrell's head, which was terrifying. "Yes, Master Potter, come up." Quirrell waved his wand, and the gravel on the ground turned into countless ropes, tying Harry up. Expelliarmus. Irina raised her hand and cast a disarming spell, forcing Quirrell to cancel the spell and retreat. Useless. Knock out those two guys who are in the way first. Voldemort's voice came. Quirrell nodded, and he quickly waved his wand, and spells attacked Irina and Hermione. Protect from armor. Hermione cast the shield charm, trying to block Quirrell's attack. However, Hermione seemed to underestimate Quirrell's spell level. After all, Quirrell's stumbling appearance in class made it difficult for her to regard him as a master of spells. A faint shield charm broke through Hermione and hit Hermione hard. Hermione flew backwards several meters and hit the stone wall behind her and fainted. Fuck. Seeing that she lost a teammate at the beginning of the battle, Irina felt difficult. Hermione was knocked unconscious, and Harry was tied up by magic ropes in the next few spells, which made Irina fall into a situation of fighting alone with Quirrell. Even if Lin and Irina joined forces, they might not be able to defeat Quirrell, let alone Irina alone. Without a doubt, after just a few rounds, Irina was hit by a disarming spell, and the wand in her hand flew out. Although Irina still had the ability to cast spells without a wand, she chose to pretend to be defeated and fell to the ground struggling hard. "It's up to you, Harry." Irina pretended that she couldn't even stand up due to the pain, but her eyes were fixed on Quirrell. No one knew whether Quirrell would be unethical and kill her directly with a knife. Exclamation mark. Even if she had to act, she had to be prepared for both situations. Fortunately, Quirrell's desire for the Philosopher's Stone was greater than killing Irina. He tied Harry with a magic rope and tied him to the Mirror of Verized, forcing Harry to look at the Mirror of Verized. After a while, Harry saw himself holding the Philosopher's Stone in the Mirror of Verized, and then he felt his pocket sink, and the bright red Philosopher's Stone really fell into his pocket. After realizing that Harry had obtained the Philosopher's Stone, Quirrell untied his turban, revealing Voldemort's strange face. And Voldemort also possessed Quirrell again, grinning at Harry, trying to snatch the Philosopher's Stone from Harry. Bang, bang, bang. But at this critical moment, 3 gunshots were heard in succession. 3 more blood holes appeared on Quirrell's back, and the violent impact also forced Quirrell to pounce forward and fall to the ground. But how can a rat or a sparrow be worthy of tarnishing the master's proud work? Lin En walked slowly from the entrance, looking at everything here with cold eyes. In his left hand, a desert eagle with a faint glow was smoking at the muzzle. The surrounding black flames separated to both sides when they sensed Lin En's arrival, making way for Lin En. These black flames looked very high, as if welcoming their nuking. "Today I'm on the recommended position. Please support me. Please vote and reward me." Chapter 77. Give me the Philosopher's Stone, Harry. Senior LUOR. Seeing Lin En coming, Irina screamed subconsciously. Lin En gently waved the wand, and Irina's wand, that was previously knocked away, flew back to Irina's hand under the control of the floating spell. Lin En chuckled and said, "Never put your life in the hands of others." After getting the wand again, and Lin En's move, Irina simply stopped acting. She pulled out the wand and stood up. Not far away, Quirrell just remembered, but 3 explosions sounded in succession, and 3 balls of blood mist burst out from the wound where Quirrell was hit by the bullet. Under Lin En's alchemy, each bullet he fired was enchanted by the alchemy array. These bullets not only have stronger impact force, but also can produce secondary explosions after entering the enemy's body, causing heavy damage to the enemy. Thunder explosion. Lin En quickly waved the wand and fired an explosive spell at Quirrell. Voldemort controlled Quirrell to stand up and gritted his teeth to cast the armor charm. Swish, 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 swish. The armor curse blocked Lin En's explosion curse, but at this time, dozens of alchemical floating cannons around Lin En also launched attacks one after another. Countless golden beams made gas explosions and went towards Quirrell with thunderous momentum. Before coming here, Lin En had already had a countermeasure to fight Voldemort. Stopping Quirrell from drinking the blood of the unicorn in the Forbidden Forest was one of the links which could weaken Quirrell's combat power in today's battle, and the MK2 grenade stuffed into the Mirror of Verized was the second link. Even if the injuries caused by the MK2 grenade could be healed by the healing spell, the consumption of the wizard's magic power was also huge, which reduced Quirrell's magic power again. And the 3 shots that Lin En had just used the Desert Eagle to sneak attack when he was unprepared were the third link of the countermeasure. The Desert Eagle strengthened by alchemy can make Quirrell fall into a state of severe injury. In this case, even if Voldemort is in charge, it is difficult to exert his true strength. As for the continuous attacks carried out by Lin En with the wand in his hand and dozens of alchemical floating guns around him, it is the last link of the countermeasure. The storm-like offensive can make Quirrell have no time to cast healing spells to recover his injuries, which also means that Quirrell will continue to be seriously injured and face Lin En and Irina in their prime in this extremely poor state. Linked together, Lin En's strategy is obviously to completely grasp Voldemort. Damn roll. Voldemort shouted angrily, and he recognized Lin En's identity. Lin En's father betrayed him and was killed by him. I didn't expect that after 11 years, the other party's son would also hinder him like this. The 3 bullets that exploded in his body before made Quirrell's organs almost fail. If he was not treated in time, this body would soon die completely, but Lin En's offensive made him dare not distract himself at all. Flames. Lin En swung his wand. This was the first time he had chanted a fire spell this year. For someone like Lin En who could cast spells silently and without a wand, he no longer needed to chant a spell to cast a fire spell. And once Lin En chanted a spell, it meant that he was going all out with this fire spell. The red flames burned up, covering the entire room, forming a trend of burning the sky and boiling the sea, and the terrifying high temperature swept towards Quirrell. On the other side, Irina quickly used a cutting spell to break the ropes that bound Harry, and then joined in the attack on Quirrell. Voldemort roared, controlling Quirrell to cast several defensive spells in succession, and only then did he barely block the attack of the alchemical floating cannon. Facing Lin En's flames, even a strong man like Voldemort could only rely on powerful magic to maintain the armor spell, to support it in such a situation. Shattered to pieces, Lin released the spell again, and a beam of light as thick as an arm broke through the air and instantly shattered Voldemort's armor charm. At this moment, Lin had completely gained the upper hand. How is it possible? A second-year wizard can't cast such a powerful spell. Voldemort's pupils dilated, and he looked at Lin in disbelief. Lin loosened his left hand, and the luster of magic crystal that had exhausted its magic power dimmed. Yes, I really can't cast such a powerful crushing spell, but I borrowed the power of external objects. Lin chuckled, dodging Voldemort's spell, while constantly casting more powerful spells to suppress Voldemort. On the side, after rescuing Harry, Irina also began to cast a freezing spell to restrict Voldemort's movement. Clear water like a spring. Irina chanted the spell softly, and endless water flowed out from the top of the wand, but under Irina's control, it turned into ice cones all over the sky. These ice cones flashed with sharp light and shot towards Quirrell. Faced with such a desperate situation, Voldemort had to raise his hand and summon a ball of fiend fire, just like he did last time in the Forbidden Forest. No time to delay, destroy them all. Voldemort roared, and under his control, the fiend fire turned into various animal forms and rushed towards the direction of Lin and Irina to devour them. Forbidden magic fire. Seeing this, Lin released the forbidden magic fire without hesitation. A large amount of forbidden magic fire pushed up under Lin's control and once again formed a confrontation with the fiend fire. However, facing the black magic of fiend fire that can devour everything, the forbidden magic fire only played a delaying role. Give me the Philosopher's Stone, Harry. Lin cast his eyes on Harry, who stood up and shouted in a low voice. If he could get the Philosopher's Stone, then Lin En could use the alchemical device in his left hand to absorb the huge magic power inside the Philosopher's Stone for his own use. If he had the Philosopher's Stone as an energy supply, Lin En would be fully confident that he could cast the end of all curses that would be enough to extinguish these fiend fires. Hearing Lin En's words, Harry showed a vigilant look and held the Philosopher's Stone tighter. In Harry's opinion, Lin En might be a villain who wanted to get the Philosopher's Stone for his own selfish reasons, just like Voldemort. After all, the other party was Slytherin. If the Philosopher's Stone was handed over to this man named Raoul, he might take the Philosopher's Stone away immediately, and then wouldn't he and Irina have to face Voldemort alone? Exclamation mark. It must not be handed over. Harry thought so, and took 2 steps back. Give it to him, Harry. But Irina also shouted at Harry. From what Lin said when he arrived, the careful Irina caught the keyword master's proud work. Coupled with Lin's identity as an alchemist, it is obvious that the other party must have a close connection with Nicholas Flamel. No, if he is the same as Voldemort, then everything we do is in vain. Harry shouted loudly. Hearing this, Irina was a little angry. She was about to cry because of her stupid son. Lin is obviously one of us. Can't Harry even tell this? Exclamation mark. But at this moment, Lin continued to attack Quirrell with the alchemical floating cannons around him, and he waved his wand, and the powerful floating spell pulled Harry's tie to lift him up, and forcibly dragged Harry in front of him. You really have no self-knowledge. Lin sneered, stretched out his left hand, and pointed directly at Harry's pocket where the Philosopher's Stone was hidden. Chapter 78 You noseless 2-hole socket. Harry exclaimed and tried to stop him. But how could a skinny man like him stop Lin En? Exclamation mark. Lin En knocked away Harry's blocking right hand, and found the blood-colored Philosopher's Stone from Harry's pocket. What a wonderful work. Lin En shone the Philosopher's Stone in his hand against the flame not far away. The blood-red light immediately enveloped his face. He seemed to be intoxicated and said. But soon, Lin En's left hand held the Philosopher's Stone. Buzz, the explosion from the magic power sounded, and the alchemical equipment in Lin En's left hand turned into a bridge to communicate between the Philosopher's Stone and Lin En's body, allowing the huge magic power contained in the Philosopher's Stone to be used by Lin En unimpeded. However, the huge flow of magic power in a short period of time made this pair of alchemical gloves almost reach its carrying limit. Just like a circuit, passing too much current in a short period of time will cause a short circuit. This pair of alchemical gloves has begun to heat up. But Lin En's movements did not stop. He pointed his wand at the ground and said, "All curses end." A huge amount of magic power immediately swept the entire room. Whether it was the fire spell that Lin En had previously released, the golden beams of light from the alchemical floating cannons around Lin En, or the fiery curse cast by Voldemort, they all dissipated like smoke in an instant. Even the black flames at the entrance of the room dissipated under the effect of the all curses end. At this moment, only Lin En's forbidden magic fire remained in the room. This half magic and half alchemical product could survive. Expelliarmus. Lin En pointed his wand at Quirrell, and a thick red beam of light burst out. The diameter of this terrifying beam was close to 1 meter. What is the concept of a beam with a diameter of 1 meter? Exclamation mark. This is equivalent to the ray emitted by a giant laser cannon. Supported by the huge magic power provided by the Philosopher's Stone, Lin En actually released a disarming spell that had never been heard of in the entire magic world. However, after releasing this spell, some sparks also sprayed out from the top of Lin En's wand. Obviously, such a huge flow of magic power has also reached the upper limit of the wand. Lin En immediately touched his wand with some distress. He dared not let this wand continue to use such magic. If the wand was destroyed, it would be more trouble than gain. After all, he could bet that there was no wand in the world that was more suitable for him than this one. Even the Elder Wand would not work. Maybe the Elder Wand was stronger than this wand, but its addition to Lin En's affinity for fire was definitely not as strong as this wand made of mahogany grafted with sycamore wood. On the other hand, even Voldemort, who had his own body, might not be able to block such a degree of disarmament spell, let alone Voldemort, who occupied Quirrell's already seriously injured body? Exclamation mark. The terrifying red beam of light immediately knocked Quirrell dozens of meters away and hit the stone wall at the end of the room hard. Quirrell's wand didn't need to be disarmed anymore. The terrifying beam of light directly turned the wand into powder. Powdered to pieces. Not far away, Irina saw Quirrell still wanted to move, so she chanted a spell without hesitation to finish him off. Knowing the importance of finishing off, she cast a crushing spell on Quirrell's chest, shattering Quirrell's heart. So far, Voldemort's temporary carrier was officially declared dead. Facing the death of Quirrell, Lin and Irina did not relax their vigilance. Under the close gaze of the two, Quirrell's body suddenly rose with a strange black mist, and this black mist turned into Voldemort's ugly face. When seeing Voldemort turned into black mist, the scar on Harry's forehead suddenly became as hot as a flame, causing Harry to faint from the pain. The great Voldemort will return to the world one day, and you will all become the dead souls under the wand of the great Voldemort. Voldemort roared and wanted to control the black mist of the remnant soul to escape. But just as the black mist was about to leave through the entrance, a ball of forbidden magic fire with black lines rose up. Then you have to be able to leave. You two-hole socket without a nose. Lin En sneered and said, his wand lightly raised, and all the forbidden magic fire he had previously refined was released, covering the entire room. Hearing Lin En's words, Irina, who was not far away, immediately showed admiration. As expected of Senior Aluoa, he even said what she wanted to say. As for Harry, he was a little shocked. He didn't expect Lin En to mock Voldemort like this. Even if Voldemort was a remnant soul, he would probably be furious, right? Exclamation mark. As expected, after hearing Lin En's mockery, Voldemort was extremely angry. However, after sensing the forbidden magic fires around him that could seal magic, Voldemort fell silent. This power to seal magic is not only aimed at magic, but all products of magic. The reason why Voldemort can maintain this free-moving residual soul form must be due to the effect of magic, which also makes the black mist, that Voldemort's residual soul has become suppressed by the forbidden magic fire. Damn fire. How can the power to seal magic exist? Voldemort seemed a little terrified. He looked at the forbidden magic fire that was constantly compressed around him, and he actually showed a feeling of fear. He could sense the great threat of this forbidden magic fire to him, and the fear of death made Voldemort lose his composure again. At this time, Irina was also a little incredible. Although Lin En's forbidden magic fire recognized her as a friendly party, and did not suppress her magic, Voldemort's words made her understand the effect of Lin En's fire. Can it suppress magic? Exclamation mark. No wonder even Voldemort was afraid to move forward. Stay. Lin En waved his hands, and the flames covering the entire room swept towards Voldemort at lightning speed. However, Voldemort was once a Demon King level wizard after all, and even if he lost his physical body, he was still in existence. That could not be ignored. Although Voldemort was reluctant to part with the little bit of his remaining soul, he dared to split 7 Horcruxes, and he also understood the principle of breaking it when necessary to minimize the loss. Voldemort separated 2/3 of the black mist and turned it into a terrifying sharp blade to chop at Lin En's forbidden magic fire, while the remaining 1/3 of the soul took the opportunity to rush towards the only exit of the room. The black sharp blade briefly opened a gap in Lin En's forbidden magic fire, but the gap was healed in less than half a breath. But it was this half a breath of time that allowed the remaining soul of Voldemort to escape. Looking at the direction where Voldemort fled, Lin En's expression was a little gloomy. Although he was mentally prepared that he could not completely leave this remnant soul, he did not expect that the other party would leave so easily. However, being able to weaken 2/3 of Voldemort's remnant soul is also a great thing for Lin En. In this way, even if Voldemort can be resurrected in the future, his magical power will fall to the level of the Demon King and will no longer be as powerful as before. Thanks to bookfriend 202210221132209881 for the 100 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. In addition, I invite everyone to join our bookfriend group again. The group number is 458,582,079 and the password is 1990. Welcome everyone to join our big family. Thank you for your support. Chapter 79 The Philosopher's Stone belongs to you. Lin En took back his magic forbidden fire with some regret. But at this moment, another bright flame rose up. Who? Lin En showed a vigilant look on his face. This flame was not released by him. However, after seeing the figure appearing in the flame, Lin En and Irina immediately let down their guard. Professor Dumbledore. Lin En and Irina saluted at the same time. There was a phoenix on Professor Dumbledore's shoulder, and Professor Dumbledore looked at the two with a slight smile. If I'm not mistaken, it was you who protected the Philosopher's Stone from Quirrell, or Voldemort, right? Professor Dumbledore gently waved his wand, and Quirrell's body disappeared, and the mirror of their eyes turned into a small mirror under the powerful shrinking spell, and was collected by Professor Dumbledore. Lin En nodded slightly and said, yes, it's a pity that our magic level is not enough and Voldemort still escaped. Don't underestimate yourself, child. Professor Dumbledore came to Lin En and patted Lin En's shoulder. I'm afraid that I can't even keep 2/3 of Voldemort's soul. Lin En was not surprised by Professor Dumbledore's words. He looked at Dumbledore calmly. It seems that you have been here to watch for a long time. Professor Dumbledore smiled and shook his head, saying, no, I just arrived when Quirrell died. Lin En would not believe his nonsense, but he nodded in conviction on the surface. At this time, Professor Dumbledore cast his eyes on Irina. Miss Lovell, you did a good job too. You are also worthy of praise for being able to protect your companions from Voldemort. Irina leaned forward slightly. Thank you for the compliment, Professor. Irina also didn't believe what Dumbledore said about her just arriving. In her opinion, the other party was probably already here watching when she came to this room. Very good, Dumbledore said. Take your friends and return to the castle together. Hold my hand. Lin did not hesitate and put her right hand on Dumbledore's shoulder. Irina first carried the unconscious Hermione on her back, then dragged Harry up with one hand, and finally stretched out her other hand to grab Dumbledore's left hand. TSK Dumbledore smiled and blinked, and the Phoenix Forks chirped, and a flame swept up. The next moment, everyone returned to Hogwarts Castle. Ron had been waiting here for a long time. Seeing that Harry and Hermione were unconscious, Ron exclaimed and hurriedly tried to wake them up, but was stopped by Dumbledore. Ms. Lovell, Mr. Weasley, I think you should send your friends to the school hospital now, right? Dumbledore blinked his blue eyes behind his half-moon glasses and said to Irina and Ron. Hearing this, Irina and Ron looked at each other. Irina picked up Hermione, while Ron carried Harry on his back, and the two headed towards the school hospital. Mr. O, can we have a chat? Looking at the direction where Irina and the others left, Dumbledore smiled, then looked at Lin and asked. Lin didn't know what the other party was thinking, but he still nodded and said, okay. So, Lin followed Dumbledore to the principal's office in the tower. Cockroach pile. The principal's office was guarded by a huge stone beast. After hearing Dumbledore say the correct password, it made way. Behind the stone beast was an automatic spiral staircase. At the top of the staircase was the door of the office. It was a shiny oak door with a brass door knocker in the shape of a lion's body and eagle's head. After entering the headmaster's office, Lin En could see that the walls of this spacious and beautiful round room were covered with portraits of past headmasters. The headmasters in these portraits usually dozed off in their own frames, and occasionally visited other frames. On Dumbledore's desk, Lin En could also see the sorting hat. TSK after arriving at the office, the Phoenix Forks chirped joyfully and flew to the shelf that belonged to it. What would you like to drink, coffee or black tea? Professor Dumbledore sat down and looked at Lin En with a smile. Lin En said softly, black tea. After getting Dumbledore's permission, Lin En also sat down and sat face to face with Dumbledore. Dumbledore waved his wand, and a teapot automatically flew up and poured steaming black tea into the teacup, and the teacup filled with black tea floated up and came to Lin En. Lin En took a sip of the black tea, and then he remembered something and took out a blood-red stone from his pocket. Professor, your Philosopher's Stone. Lin En placed the Philosopher's Stone on the table in front of Dumbledore and said so. Although the powerful power brought by the Philosopher's Stone made him unforgettable, he understood that the power brought by the Philosopher's Stone was only temporary after all. If his own strength could not keep up, then if he used magic that far exceeded his body's ability to bear for a long time, I'm afraid that the scrapped alchemical gloves would be his end. Seeing that Lin En was not greedy for this power, Dumbledore couldn't help but reveal a sincere smile. However, to Lin En's surprise, Dumbledore did not reach out to take the Philosopher's Stone, but pushed the Philosopher's Stone back and pushed it in front of Lin En. Professor, what are you doing? Lin En looked at Professor Dumbledore in some confusion, not understanding what this meant. If Dumbledore wanted to test himself, then he had taken the initiative to hand over the Philosopher's Stone just now, so he had passed the test, right? Exclamation mark. But what did Dumbledore mean by pushing the Philosopher's Stone back? Exclamation mark. Looking at Lin En's puzzled eyes, Dumbledore's blue eyes flashed and said, I think this Philosopher's Stone belongs to you. Hearing this, Lin En was a little incredible. According to the plot in the original book, this Philosopher's Stone will be destroyed by Dumbledore after completing the task of luring Voldemort. But what does Dumbledore mean by saying that the Philosopher's Stone belongs to him now? Before Lin En asked, Dumbledore explained softly, originally, Nicole planned to let me destroy this Philosopher's Stone after using it, because Nicole and his wife have lived for more than 600 years, and they don't have too much attachment to this world, and can calmly face the great adventure of death. Lin En nodded slightly, and what Dumbledore said was no different from what he knew. Dumbledore continued, but last summer, Nicole asked Wallison to tell me that after this incident, he hoped that I could give the Philosopher's Stone to you as a gift from an elder. Chapter 80 The Secret Keeper of Roll Manor. At this time, Dumbledore recalled the conversation between Green and him in his office last summer vacation. Mr. Dumbledore, my teacher hopes that you can hand over the Philosopher's Stone to Lin after the matter this year is over, as a gift from an elder. Green said to Dumbledore calmly. Dumbledore was a little surprised and asked, is this what Nico meant? But didn't he agree to destroy the Philosopher's Stone before? Green nodded slightly and said, but the teacher met Lin, you know, the first year student in Slytherin, my student. He believes that the Philosopher's Stone itself is not sinful, and he also hopes to witness the growth of Lin. Besides, I think Lin needs the Philosopher's Stone as a beacon on his alchemical path. I think you need it, don't you? Dumbledore said with a smile, thinking a lot. Lin was silent. He didn't expect that his master would choose to give the Philosopher's Stone to him. Yes, as his teacher said, he needs this Philosopher's Stone. With enough magic power, many things that he couldn't do can be solved perfectly. According to Lin's own magic power growth rate, he had to wait until his 4th grade to learn to refine alchemy arrays without the carving knife, and wait until his 5th grade to condense alchemy arrays in the void, just like Green did last Halloween. But with the Philosopher's Stone as an energy source, Lin can now learn these profound alchemy techniques. At this time, some people may feel confused. With the alchemy gloves refined by Lin and Lin's own body, can't they bear the huge magic power of the Philosopher's Stone? Even the spell cannot be cast continuously, let alone the alchemy, that requires a lot of time and energy! Exclamation mark. You know, Lin can control the rate of drawing magic power from the Philosopher's Stone by himself, and the reason why he reached the upper limit of the carrying capacity in the previous battle is that facing Voldemort, a former Demon King level wizard, Lin did not dare to be arrogant at all. Only by going all out to fight Voldemort can Lin En have a chance to defeat him, and this is why Lin En desperately wants the magic power of the Philosopher's Stone. Fighting with one's life is like this, but it is not necessary for alchemy in daily life. Lin En can just get the magic power he needs, which is beneficial to Lin En. Lin En understood this. He reached out to pick up the Philosopher's Stone and put it away again. But, Professor, I still can't figure it out. Lin En looked directly at Professor Dumbledore. Professor Dumbledore gestured. You say. Lin En said bluntly, I think, Professor, you should understand my background. My father was a Death Eater. Professor, are you really assured that a descendant of a Death Eater will get such a precious thing as the Philosopher's Stone? What if all this is just a play directed and performed by Voldemort and me? Hearing Lin En's words, Dumbledore laughed out loud. Dumbledore laughed so hard that he almost cried. After a while, Dumbledore put away his smile. Dumbledore looked at Lin and said seriously, you know, Lin, I never doubt you. Because your father has never been a Death Eater. Lin was a little unbelievable. His father was not a Death Eater? Exclamation mark. How could that be possible? Exclamation mark. Lin believed that everyone would deceive himself, but his mother alone would not. It was certain that his father had been a Death Eater. Even the Death Eater camp in the Daily Prophet more than a decade ago had appeared in his father's figure. But now, Dumbledore said that his father was not a Death Eater, which made Lin feel very puzzled. Perhaps, you have wondered who set the Fidelius charm of Roll Manor, and who the secret keeper was. Dumbledore said so. Lin nodded secretly. He was not surprised that Dumbledore knew about his family's situation, and what Dumbledore said was indeed something he had wondered about before. But in fact, Lin, I'm the secret keeper. Dumbledore's understated words set off a storm in Lin's heart. Dumbledore looked at Lin En sincerely and continued, "The reason why I said your father is not a Death Eater is that your father has never sincerely submitted to Voldemort. He is a member of the Order of the Phoenix, a society I founded to fight against Voldemort." Hearing this, a possibility flashed through Lin En's mind, and he felt that this idea was really crazy. However, Dumbledore seemed to see what Lin En was thinking. He nodded and said, "Yes, your father, Henry Rowe, is an undercover arranged by the Order of the Phoenix to join the Death Eaters. During the days of fighting Voldemort, your father Henry provided a lot of intelligence to the Order of the Phoenix, which enabled us to successfully prevent Voldemort's many actions and saved many of our friends from death. It turned out that Henry Rowe was a member of the Order of the Phoenix." Thinking back to the previous things, Lin En felt that everything made sense. Yes, considering the Weasley family's hatred for Voldemort and the Death Eaters, it is impossible for Mrs. Weasley to be so friendly to him as the son of a Death Eater, even if she has the Weasley twins as friends. After all, even Fleur, her daughter-in-law, Mrs. Weasley didn't have a good face, and this was only because of her half-blood Veela identity. If his father was actually a member of the Order of the Phoenix and a former comrade in arms of the Weasleys, then it would make sense that Mrs. Weasley cared about him so much, and even sewed a piece of clothing for him at Christmas. So my father's death was because his undercover identity was exposed? Lin asked. Dumbledore shook his head. "I don't know. We only received this letter before Hindley was killed by Voldemort." As he said that, Dumbledore handed a completely yellowed parchment to Lin. Lin looked at the envelope, which had only one sentence written on it. "Regulus Black found me and wanted to take me to a place where there were weapons that could defeat Voldemort." Seeing this, Lin understood. It seemed that his father went to the cave where Voldemort stored the Horcruxes with Regulus Black and took away the Horcruxes. Regulus died, and his father left with the Horcruxes. However, his father's abnormality was discovered by Voldemort, which led to his father's death. But, where is the Horcrux that was taken away? Is it still stored in Black's ancestral home? Lin was a little confused. "So, your father Hindley has never been a sinner, but a great hero, a hero standing in the dark. And you, Lin, Hindley's only child, naturally will not be the descendant of a Death Eater. Remember, you are the descendant of a hero." Dumbledore's half-moon glasses flashed, and he said to Lin very seriously, "If the Death Eaters led by Voldemort are the darkness of the wizarding world, then Henry Rowe, who is in the darkness, is a crack in that darkness. However, everything has cracks, and that's where the light comes in. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. Thank you." Chapter 81 Only love and food are not to be missed. After leaving Dumbledore's office, Lin looked worried. After learning that his father was once a member of the Order of the Phoenix, he was a little unsure about his attitude towards the Order of the Phoenix. Originally, Lin had no feelings for the Order of the Phoenix. In Lin's opinion, the Order of the Phoenix's actions against Voldemort were mostly small group operations. They were not like Grindelwald, who could mobilize the resistance of ordinary wizards and raise the banner of resistance. Relatively speaking, the actions of the Order of the Phoenix were like some losers who resisted stubbornly. They could not stop Voldemort, and could only increase their casualties. If Harry's mother had not used blood magic, and loved to protect Harry, and rebound Voldemort's killing curse, I'm afraid that the British wizarding world would have been ruled by Voldemort long ago. However, after learning that his father was once a member of the Order of the Phoenix, Lin, as a descendant of a member of the Order of the Phoenix, had a subtle relationship with the Order of the Phoenix. No matter what, let's make good use of everything we can use now to enhance our magic power. In this way, I will have the choice between Voldemort and the Order of the Phoenix. Lin En shook his head, as if he wanted to get rid of his distracting thoughts. Lin En returned to the Slytherin dormitory. After defeating Voldemort, he still had a lot of things to do, such as replenishing the forbidden magic fire consumed by Voldemort's residual soul, and re-refining an alchemical device that can carry the power of the Philosopher's Stone and use the Philosopher's Stone as the source of magic for Lin En to cast spells. On the other side, Irina and Ron sent Harry and Hermione to the school hospital. Hermione was hit by Quirrell's coma spell and was not seriously injured, so she woke up on the way to the school hospital. However, Madame Pomfrey at the school hospital did not let Hermione leave. Instead, she carefully examined Hermione's body with magic and asked Hermione to stay in the school hospital for a day for observation. Although Harry was not attacked, when Voldemort's soul left Quirrell's body, the malice of the soul had a slight impact on Harry's blood protection magic, which made Harry sleep for 3 full days in the school hospital before he woke up. The day after Harry woke up was the end of year banquet at Hogwarts. During these few days, Lin En refined a part of the forbidden magic fire. Of course, these forbidden magic fires were far less than those consumed by Voldemort's 2/3 of the soul. If he wanted to replenish the inventory, Lin En might need to refine it for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep. As for refining the alchemical product used to carry the power of the Philosopher's Stone, it would take at least 7 days. In the hall, Lin En sat calmly at the Slytherin table. On his right were the Malfoy trio, who were talking and talking, while Irina and the other 4 at the Gryffindor table sat together, waiting for the dinner to begin. At this time, the hall was decorated with green and silver, representing Slytherin, to celebrate Slytherin's winning of the House Cup for 7 consecutive years. A moment later, Dumbledore came to the hall and gave his speech to the students. After giving his speech, Dumbledore had to announce the champion of the House Cup before he could officially start the year-end banquet. Now, as far as I know, we must first hold the award ceremony for the House Cup. The specific scores of each house are as follows. 4th place, Hufflepuff, 352 points. 3rd place, Gryffindor, 389 points. 2nd place, Ravenclaw, 426 points. 1st place, Slytherin, 572 points. Dumbledore said loudly. During the school year, Irina earned more than 100 points for Gryffindor, but in the dragon incident, Gryffindor deducted 50 points more than in the original book, so Gryffindor's final score was 389, which was 77 points higher than the 312 points in the original book. At least it got Gryffindor out of the bottom position. Similarly, because Irina burned Charles' letter, Malfoy did not make trouble in the dragon incident, which ultimately led to Slytherin not being deducted 50 points because of Malfoy. Therefore, Slytherin's score was 50 points higher than in the original book. In addition, Lin also earned more than 100 points for Slytherin this school year, which made Slytherin's score each an astonishing 572 points, 146 points higher than the 2nd place Ravenclaw. It seems that even Dumbledore can't force Gryffindor to add points. Irina shook her head and thought with a smile. Yes, good performance, Slytherin, Dumbledore said, but several things that happened recently must also be taken into account. The hall suddenly became quiet, and Irina was also a little surprised. Could it be that Dumbledore still wants to force extra points at this point? Exclamation mark. First, Mr. Ennui. Facing an invincible danger, he chose to ask the professor for help, which gave our hero timely support. For this, I will reward Gryffindor 50 points. Dumbledore cleared his throat and said, yes, it was really timely support. Lin at the Slytherin table and Irina at the Gryffindor table rolled their eyes at the same time. If Dumbledore had come later, I'm afraid they wouldn't even see the shadow of Voldemort's residual soul. At this time, cheers came from the Gryffindor table, but they were not looking at Ron, but Lin, Irina, Hermione and Harry. Yes, in the past few days, the fact that Lin, Irina, Hermione and Harry dared to face Voldemort and repel Voldemort who broke into Hogwarts spread throughout the school, and Lin, Irina, Hermione and Harry were also called heroes by these students. Of course, Hermione and Harry were basically called heroes by lying down. Although this is a good thing, it is a big trouble for Lin En. In the past few days, there are always some Slytherin wizards who admire him and want to visit him, which makes him feel a little uneasy when he is refining alchemy. But these Slytherin wizards are all well known and have backgrounds. Making friends with them will also help Lin En to move more smoothly in the magic world in the future. As for the wizards from other colleges, they can't even enter the Slytherin common room, so naturally they can't disturb Lin En. For Irina, this is happiness, because the Gryffindor wizards all know that Irina likes all kinds of snacks and desserts. They call her a hero and give her a lot of snacks as gifts, which makes her, who was originally a little embarrassed and unnatural, accept these praises calmly. After all, only love and food are not to be missed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Concealment and Truth. Second, Miss Hermione Granger. Facing dozens of chess pieces, she responded calmly and fought for opportunities for her companions. At the same time, she showed great courage and extraordinary courage in the face of danger. For this, I will reward Gryffindor House with 60 points. Dumbledore said loudly. His words once again caused cheers from the Gryffindor long table. Although Hermione was knocked down by Quirrell's spell, as soon as she entered the last room, it took enough courage to enter that room, and this was the reason why Dumbledore awarded Hermione for this. Looking at the cheering little lions and the stinky-faced little snakes, Dumbledore continued. Third, Harry Potter. He also showed great courage and extraordinary courage in the face of danger. For this, I will also reward Gryffindor House with 60 points. After talking about Harry, it was Lin and Irina's turn. Dumbledore said happily. Finally, Lin Rao and Irina lol. Facing extremely dangerous enemies, they showed great magical strength and extraordinary courage. They defeated the terrifying enemy with their magical power and protected the peace of Hogwarts. For this, I will reward them 150 points. 150 points each. As Dumbledore finished speaking, the whole hall was filled with cheers from students from various colleges. If the first three got points, the little wizards from other colleges would have objections. Then Lin and Irina's rewards were something everyone recognized. Although Dumbledore did not say it clearly, everyone knew who the enemy Lin and Irina faced was. That was the mysterious man. The Dark Lord who once brought darkness to the magic world and filled every wizard family with death and wailing. It was incredible to be able to repel Voldemort as a first or second grade wizard. Fortunately, Dumbledore gave Lin and Irina 150 points. If they had gotten 100 points, or 60 points like Hermione and Harry, I'm afraid the word conspiracy would have been engraved on Dumbledore's forehead. After all, compared with facing Voldemort and repelling him, just passing through the child's house trap, and then being knocked down by Voldemort with one blow, or winning by lying on the side is nothing. At the end of the reward, Dumbledore also gave Gryffindor 10 points for Neville's bravery, but this little thing was too insignificant compared to the previous things, and this mere 10 points had no effect on the final result, so no one cared about the last 10 points. It seems that, even if Dumbledore gave us extra points, the final winner is still Slytherin. Irina smiled lightly and said. After Dumbledore announced the extra points, the tension at the Slytherin table finally relaxed. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and cheered for their own school's victory. After the ownership of the school cup was determined, the year-end banquet officially began. The year-end banquet is indeed one of the most sumptuous dinners in Hogwarts Castle in a year. The food on the long table is almost different, which makes people's appetites wet. Lin's fork was so fast that it was about to leave an afterimage, and the food piled high on Lin's plate was constantly being eaten. In fact, Lin's movements were already very elegant, while Irina at the Gryffindor table on the other side was so fast that she almost grabbed it directly. Woo, I'll finish it, even if I choke to death. Irina drank the drink in big gulps to prevent herself from choking to death. Last time at the Halloween dinner, she didn't have meal because of the troll incident, and at the Christmas dinner, she only ate a little because she was obsessed with opening blind boxes. Oh no, opening lottery firecrackers. Damn it, this time she must make up for the food at the Halloween dinner and the Christmas dinner. Irina's speed of eating shocked even Ron, who was chewing a chicken leg in each hand. Soon, the year-end banquet was over, and the little wizards from various colleges returned to their dormitories to pack up. The next day, everyone set out on their way home from Hogwarts Castle. As the Hogwarts Express slowly drove into King's Cross Station, the little wizards jumped for their parents. In a corner of King's Cross Station, Lin silently watched Irina leave with a couple who looked younger, and then took the hand of the house elf Gale beside him, and returned to Rao Manor through Gale's apparition. This school year's test ends here. At the beginning of the next school year, I will confirm your true identity, Irina. Lin En's mind was still thinking about what happened in Hogwarts this year. Seeing Irina in the last room, Lin En had actually confirmed Irina's identity as a time traveler, but there was still a thin veil between him and Irina, and neither of them had broken it. But now, after sensing Irina's kindness, Lin En decided to break this veil first and confess the identities of both of them as time travelers. If it's one of us, well, it seems that I can prepare a good gift, Lin En thought to himself, and walked into the Owl Castle. Lin En came to the living room of the castle and saw Irina sitting on the sofa reading the Daily Prophet. Mom, I have something to tell you. Lin En came to sit next to Irina and then told her everything that happened in Dumbledore's office. After learning that her husband had never been a Death Eater, Rowena was somewhat shocked, but then somewhat relieved. So that's why, although Henry joined the Death Eaters despite my dissuasion, he often complained to me about Voldemort's cruelty. I didn't expect that Henry was actually Dumbledore's undercover, and I didn't even know about this. Thinking of this, Rowena felt a little disappointed again. Lin consoled her, Mom, he may not want to tell you the truth, but there are too many ways in the magic world to get a person's memory, whether it is legilimency or veritaserum, or my alchemy array, they can all achieve this goal. Rowena nodded slightly and said, I understand all this, I'm not blaming him for not telling me the truth, but because, after knowing the truth, I can no longer see the real him. After the voice fell, Rowena fell silent. Yes, if the price of knowing the truth is the death of her husband, then Rowena would rather hope that Henry would conceal her for the rest of her life, and be a Death Eater in her eyes for the rest of her life. Please give me recommendations, rewards, and monthly tickets. Thank you for your support. Chapter 83 Demonic Authority. Life during the holidays is pleasant, even for Lin En. Being able to do alchemy without being disturbed by outsiders is also a special pleasure for Lin En. After returning to the Roll Castle, Lin En spent 3 days and 3 nights to replenish the inventory of the forbidden magic fire, and then he continued to start the next step of alchemy. The alchemy that Lin En is going to do this time is a combination of magic alchemy and array alchemy. He must first use various raw materials to refine a proto-embryo with high magic adaptability, which can carry and transmit a large amount of magic. The shape of this proto-embryo, Lin En intends to make into an arm guard. Compared with gloves, the alchemy device in the shape of an arm guard will not affect Lin En's daily activities. Lin En can wear it with him, unlike gloves that need to be removed when eating. This time, Lin En was well prepared for the alchemy. Unlike the hasty refining of the previous alchemy gloves, there are more than 10 kinds of alchemy materials in front of Lin En. In addition to 6 different metal materials and ore materials, Lin En also added many magical materials from magical animals. For example, the hair of the invisible beast can add the function of invisibility to the original embryo, making it more concealed. The powder made from the horn of the unicorn can effectively resist some attacks of black magic or curses. The tail feathers of the phoenix and the fresh dragon blood from Hagrid's little dragon can increase the flame tolerance of the original embryo to prevent the final product from being destroyed by Lin's flame. There are many other magic materials that I will not list one by one. The functions of these magic materials are roughly the same, that is, to enhance the magic charging limit and protection function of the alchemical product. Swish. Lin's left hand gently waved, and a ball of flame rose out of thin air. Lin's right hand holding the magic wand shook slightly, and the silent floating spell was cast. More than 10 kinds of materials placed beside him floated up one by one, and flew into the magic flame. The power of flame and alchemy constantly intersects, constantly tempering and fusing these materials, making them a new alchemical product. As time goes by, a piece of metal shining with golden light appears in the flame. Although this piece of metal is metal, it is very flexible, and can even be stretched like a rubber band. The piece of metal that shone with golden light was covered with red lines, and the faint magical fluctuations made it invisible from time to time. At this moment, Lin En's alchemy had reached the final stage. Although Lin En had been exposed to legal alchemy for 1 year less than array alchemy, Lin En's attainments in legal alchemy were no weaker than most French alchemists. After all, Lin En's legal alchemy was taught by Nicolas Flamel himself. Under Lin En's control, the flames licked every corner of the magic metal and pushed it to continuously transform with a slight force. Soon, the magic metal turned into the shape of an arm guard. It was golden in color, and red lines appeared on the surface. Although it had not been enchanted by array alchemy, the inner side of the original embryo of the arm guard naturally had an alchemical rune. This alchemical rune was produced by legal alchemy and could not be engraved by the alchemist himself. As for the content of this alchemical rune, it is invisibility. After Lin En used magic to activate this alchemical rune, this arm guard embryo was able to enter the invisible state. This alchemical rune comes from the fur of the invisible beast and is a naturally born alchemical rune. After completing the refining of the arm guard embryo, Lin En let out a long breath and slowly retracted the flame. Although the alchemical process is very short, it takes a long time. In order to refine this arm guard embryo, Lin En continued alchemy for 3 days and 3 nights. Casting the flame spell for 3 days without interruption, the consumption of magic power is not small. At this time, Lin En's face was pale. He ate the food that the house elf Gale brought into the room, and at the same time, absorbed the magic power of the magic stone to replenish his vacant magic power. Without the assistance of the alchemical device, Lin En's magic power flow efficiency was extremely low when absorbing the magic power of the magic stone. It can be said that for every 1% of magic power absorbed by Lin En, 99% of the magic power escaped into the air. If this is put in the battle, Lin En's speed of replenishing magic power may not be able to keep up with the speed of his consumption. After resting for most of the day, Lin En once again devoted himself to alchemy. After completing the arm guard embryo, Lin En had to use the knowledge of array alchemy to enchant this arm guard embryo and engrave the alchemy array. So, another 4 days passed. Lin En waved his wand and tapped on the arm guard. A golden light flashed by, and at least more than 100 densely packed alchemy arrays originally engraved on the surface of the arm guard disappeared into the alchemy arm guard. Just like the alchemy arrays of the mirror of their eyes are hidden inside the object. As a powerful array alchemist, Lin En naturally learned the secret method of hiding the alchemy array. It's done. Lin En slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. Although the magic power in his body was almost exhausted, his face was full of a satisfied smile. Lin En gently brushed away the dust left when engraving the alchemy array, held up the arm guard as if he had found a treasure, and put it on his right arm. Lin En picked up the magic wand with his left hand, and then gently tapped the arm guard on his right arm. A golden light flashed by, and the center of the arm guard actually cracked, and a groove appeared inside. Various alchemy arrays were connected to the groove in all directions, and almost every alchemy array pulled out a golden thread connected to the groove. Lin En carefully took out the magic stone, and put the bright red gem into the groove of the arm guard. The magic stone actually fit perfectly with the groove of the arm guard. After the magic stone was embedded, the groove closed automatically, and another golden light flashed, and the crack on the arm guard quietly disappeared, looking no different from the original appearance. But Lin En, who was equipped with the arm guard, could feel a surge of power pouring into his body, and the powerful magic contained in the magic stone could also be used by him through this arm guard. Lin En was not surprised by this. After all, among the more than 100 alchemy arrays he engraved, nearly half of them were about how to better control the power in them. From now on, I will call you the authority of the demon god. Lin En nodded with satisfaction. After equipping the magic stone, he felt as if he had obtained the authority of the demon god, and could create and destroy the world in a breath. Of course, this was just an illusion, that he had gained too much power in a short period of time. As for the actual situation, Lin En guessed that he could fight Professor Green without losing. Chapter 84, Botrickle and the Scandinavian Mountains. After all, the reason why Professor Green lost to Cassilici on Halloween last year was because of his insufficient reserves of magic power, which caused the several alchemy arrays around him to lose their energy sources, and could no longer launch powerful attacks. Lin, who has the power of the demon god, can use the Philosopher's Stone as his energy source, which is almost an inexhaustible source of energy. In addition, Lin's fire spell is powerful enough, and will not accidentally hurt friendly forces. Lin is fully capable of fighting Professor Green without losing the upper hand. After completing the refining of the power of the demon god, Lin plans to give himself a short vacation, and have a good rest. Did you forget that you are on vacation now? Rowena looked at Lin and said helplessly. This child should not be assigned to Slytherin. He should go to Ravenclaw. How can a second-year wizard have such a long vacation? Seeing her mother's angry look, Lin En couldn't help but smile and said, "Mom, I forgot. But I can only rest for more than half a month. I plan to go to France to find my teacher in August. With the Philosopher's Stone, it's time for me to learn the skills of refining alchemy arrays out of thin air." Although Irina felt sorry for her child, she saw Lin En's eyes full of fighting spirit, so she couldn't bear to dissuade Lin En, so she had to let him go. On the other hand, after the holiday at Hogwarts, Irina followed her parents to travel around. Half a month after the holiday, Irina and her parents came to the Scandinavian peninsula in the northwest corner of Europe for a 7-day tour. The Scandinavian peninsula is located in the northwest corner of Europe. It borders the Baltic Sea, the Norwegian Sea and the Barents Sea in northern Europe. It borders Russia and northern Finland, and extends north to Finland, meaning the place where Scandinavians live. On the Scandinavian peninsula, there is a mountain range called the Scandinavian Mountains that runs through the central and western parts of the peninsula, forming the main axis of the peninsula's terrain. This Scandinavian Mountains is the destination of Irina's family. "Igor, I think we should take an off-road vehicle up the mountain." At the bottom of the Scandinavian Mountains, a young lady said to the man behind Irina. The young lady was naturally Irina's mother, and the man was Irina's father, Igor lol. "Oh, dear, don't you think hiking up the mountain is a wonderful thing? It allows us not to miss those beautiful scenery." Igor smiled and said. Irina's mother, Carolina lol, was a little dissatisfied. She said, "If you want to hike up the mountain, I'm afraid 7 days won't be enough for our trip." Igor was a little helpless. He looked at his baby daughter, Irina. "Which of your mother's ideas do you think is more appropriate?" Seeing that to looking at her, Irina smiled sweetly. "Mom's idea is right. Under normal circumstances, we can't complete the trip on foot in 7 days, but we have magic." As she said that, Irina pulled out the magic wand from her pocket and waved it gently. Igor and Carolina only felt their feet lighten, as if they were as light as a swallow. They moved a little and found that their speed had become much faster, while their physical energy consumption was reduced a lot. With magic, we can travel all over Scandinavia in a limited time, and we can't miss every scenery, Irina said with a smile. Looking at the surprised look of her parents, Irina couldn't help but thank the suspected time traveler, Senior Luoa, in her heart. When she was about to board the Hogwarts Express to return that day, she received a notice that warned the young wizard not to use magic during the holidays. After receiving the notice, Irina felt a mysterious magic wrapped around her wand. She understood that it was the trace of the Ministry of Magic monitoring the young wizard's spell casting. Fortunately, Senior Ole was kind and used alchemy to block the monitoring of the trace, so that she could use magic wantonly during the holidays, which was convenient for herself and her family. With the blessing of magic, Irina's family climbed the mountains, crossed countless dense forests, and enjoyed countless scenery. Time came to the second day of the family of 3 entering the Scandinavian mountains. Irina's family came to the depths of the Scandinavian mountains, and in front of them was a forest that seemed to have no end. "Oh, forest exploration." Igor clapped his hands like a child and strode into the forest. Irina and Carolina followed closely behind. This forest seemed a little strange. Whenever they walked a certain distance forward, Igor and Carolina would subconsciously change their direction, which made Irina feel a little strange. "Dad, Mom, why do you keep changing directions?" Finally, Irina couldn't help asking. The two looked at Irina with confusion, and Carolina said, "Irina, we have always been walking in one direction." Hearing this, Irina finally understood. "I'm afraid that the part of the forest they just bypassed belongs to the magical world. If the center of this forest belongs to the magical world, then her parents, who are muggles, will naturally bypass this area subconsciously when passing through this area, because all the intersections between the muggle world and the magical world are cast with muggle repelling spells by the auras of the Ministry of Magic, and all the muggles who come here will leave for various reasons." The reason why Igor and Carolina did not leave, but changed directions without noticing, may be because they were blessed with Irina's magic. After learning that there was a magic world ahead, Igor became interested. Under Irina's lead, he and Carolina walked into the forest that had been bypassed. As expected, the further the three walked, the more different everything they saw became. Various magical plants grew in every corner of the forest, shining with a different brilliance and attracting attention. In addition to these magical plants, Irina also found many magical animals, but these magical animals, that had never seen humans, dared not get too close. When Irina saw them, they timidly retreated into the shadows. After walking for an unknown period of time, Irina suddenly found that the trees ahead became sparse, and a 4 or 5 meter high tree grew alone in the center of an open space. Irina asked her parents to stop, and then approached the tree carefully. She had a strong affinity for ice element, but she actually sensed that the tree was constantly emitting a cold breath. This was actually a new species of magical tree that had never been recorded in the magic world. Just as Irina was about to touch the tree, she was suddenly startled and looked at the branches of the tree. On the branches of this strange magical tree, there were dozens of small creatures with 2 brown eyes, and their bodies looked like they were made of bark and twigs. This is a botricle. Irina couldn't help but be a little surprised. Please recommend reward and monthly ticket. Chapter 85 Kingv, the tree guarding hunchback that controls ice and frost. As far as Irina knew, the botricle was a magical animal that protected trees. They were mainly active in the western part of England, southern Germany, and some forests in Scandinavia. They were peaceful, extremely shy, and insect-eating magical animals. Although the botricle looked harmless, if the tree it inhabited was threatened, it would jump down and pounce on the loggers or tree repair experts who tried to destroy its home, digging their rise with its long and sharp fingers. If a wizard offered a woodlice to the botricle, it would be comforted for a long time, so that he or she could take wood from the tree to make a wand. Yes, the trees where the botricle inhabited were mostly magical trees that could be used as raw materials for magic wands. In other words, the strange magical tree in front of Irina was most likely a tree suitable for making a magic wand. This surprised Irina. You know, when Irina was in Ollivander's wand shop, she didn't get the most suitable wand for herself. She tried almost all the wands in the wand shop, but in the end, she could only choose a more suitable wand from these wands that didn't suit her and let her cast her magic more smoothly. Mr. Ollivander felt guilty for a long time and promised to give this wand to Irina. After all, in Mr. Ollivander's view, it was absolutely his dereliction of duty that his wand shop didn't have wands suitable for little wizards. And now, on this unheard of magical tree in front of her, Irina saw the hope of getting the most suitable wand for herself. Hello, little cuties. Irina suppressed her excitement for the time being and looked at these botricles. The cute and small appearance of these botricles made her eyes light up. In addition to snacks, Irina's hobbies are some cute little animals, otherwise she wouldn't have kept so many hakami at home in her previous life. Seeing these cute botricles now, Irina felt that her heart was about to be melted by cuteness. At this time, these botricles looked at Irina with some caution. Although this girl made them feel a kind of intimacy and made them want to get close to her, they still resisted the impulse in their hearts and remained calm for the strange little witch they had never seen before. Until Irina took out a whole bottle of their favorite earthworms. Eat it quickly, little cuties. After signaling that the parents could come over, Irina opened the bottle of earthworms and poured them on the ground in front of the botricles. Irina had seen cute creatures like botricles in Hagrid's Magical Beast book and knew that they liked earthworms the most, so she prepared 3 or 4 bottles of earthworms with her in case of emergency. Unexpectedly, she actually encountered this cute magical animal in the Scandinavian mountains during this holiday. Igor and Carolina watched curiously as these botricles rushed forward without any reservation, holding the ground beetles and enjoying them. While these botricles were enjoying the beetles, Irina was also introducing this magical animal to her parents. Just as Irina was happily introducing it to her parents, a small botricle gently pulled the white silk on Irina's calf with its branch-like hands. Ah, is this for me? Thank you so much. Irina looked over and saw that the botricle was holding a branch that was taller than its body and wanted to give it to Irina. Irina was surprised to take the branch. The branch given by the botricle himself was definitely a material that could be used to make a wand. In the magic world, botricles are equivalent to quality inspectors of the raw materials of the wand. Only qualified wand materials will be given as gifts by these cute botricles. When she touched the branch, Irina could feel a faint chill coming out of the branch, but this chill did not make her feel cold. Instead, it made her feel very comfortable, as if it was a part of her body. This feeling made Irina determined that this was the most suitable one for her. After putting away the magic branch given by the botricle, Irina and her parents planned to leave the forest. Although she liked these little lives very much, she did not want to disturb their lives. This experience should be regarded as a wonderful encounter in life, and it should be hidden in her heart forever. Irina thought so. But just as Irina slowly stepped back, the botricle that gave Irina the magic branch followed with its short legs. What's wrong? Irina squatted down and looked at the botricle curiously. The small botricle pointed at Irina, then pointed at herself, and took 2 steps closer to Irina, and finally stretched out his hand to pull the white silk on Irina's calf. You mean, you want to go with me? Irina was a little surprised. The botricle nodded vigorously, and in one go, it jumped onto Irina's shoulder, and rested on Irina's head with enjoyment. Feeling the little life next to her head, Irina couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Could it be that she could also have a botricle companion of her own like the magical animal master Mr. Newt Scamander? Exclamation mark. I remember that Mr. Newt Scamander's botricle was called Picket, right? Exclamation mark. So what should my botricle be called? Irina looked at the botricle on her shoulder with some hesitation. Compared with other botricles, this botricle seemed to be a little short, but it looked very delicate, and there was a glimmer of light on its tree-like skin, just like that strange magical tree. At this moment, the botricle seemed to want to show its master its ability. It stretched out its arms, and a piece of ice crystal condensed in front of it. Is this a mutated botricle, or has its blood evolved because it grew on that strange magical tree? Seeing the botricle's ability to summon ice crystals, Irina suddenly felt a little incredible. No wonder this botricle chose to follow her. In addition to her own ability to attract small animals, her strong affinity for ice element may also be a reason. In that case, I'll call you King, Irina said happily. Although this is the West, Irina gave this botricle an oriental name. King is a fairy in charge of frost and snow in Chinese legends, and the god of frost and snow in ancient mythology. This is where Irina's expectations for this botricle to develop more abilities to control ice and snow in the future. Perhaps, King will become her inseparable partner. Irina thought to herself as she looked at King sitting on her shoulder and playing with an ice crystal. Chapter 86 Hijacking. After harvesting the magic tree branches and the botricle named King, Irina and her family set out on their journey home. In the next few days, Irina discovered that King was a greedy botricle, eating 5 earthworms every day. Fortunately, Irina had taken a lot from Hagrid before, otherwise it would not be enough to feed it. Even so, Irina had to restock after returning. On the other side, in the Roll Castle, after Lin En finished refining the power of the demon god, he rested well at home for half a month. During this period, he did not practice magic or contact alchemy. He just enjoyed the scenery in the huge Roll Manor with Irina, or occasionally came to the Muggle world to visit the commercial streets of ordinary people. In this half month, Lin En fully achieved a combination of work and rest, and did not let magic and alchemy completely fill his life. If Lin En looked a little gloomy and had a serious negative mood during the final period of Hogwarts, then after half a month of conditioning, Lin En seemed to be completely renewed and looked more energetic. At this time, it was already August, and there was still a month left before the end of the holiday. Mom, I'm leaving. Lin En waved to Irina and said. This time, Lin En went to France to find Green, so he could only complete this trip alone, and underage wizards were not eligible to apply for the Ministry of Magic's cross-border portkey, so Lin En had to go to France by plane, a means of transportation for ordinary people. The house elf Gale used apparition to take Lin En to London airport, and then Gale returned to Roll Castle. It was just time to check in and board the plane. Lin En, carrying a backpack with a traceless stretch spell, checked in and came to the cabin. Soon, the plane slowly slid across the runway, then accelerated rapidly and lifted up. The plane was flying steadily in the stratosphere, and the flight attendant who was delivering meals came out with a meal cart. Lin En unbuckled his seatbelt, drank coffee leisurely, and looked at the scenery outside the window. Although magic has countless magical aspects, The wisdom of ordinary people is no less. Thinking of this, Lin En glanced at the passengers around him. But at this moment, the sharp Lin En noticed something wrong. In the rows at the back of the cabin, there were several passengers wearing masks with eyes full of tension, and their hands were tightly covering their coats. But it was precisely because they were covering their coats that Lin En could see several protruding parts on the surface of the coats that were tightly covered. "Is that a gun?" Exclamation mark. "Excuse me. Thank you." Lin En quickly got up and pretended to walk towards the direction of the bathroom on the plane, taking the opportunity to observe those special passengers. From the eyes of those passengers, in addition to the almost unspeakable tension, Lin En also saw a little madness. Obviously, these people are definitely not passengers, perhaps hijackers. Lin En hid in the bathroom. He pulled out the magic wand from his pocket and cast a simple spell on himself, making his body become like that of an adult. Then he used transfiguration to transform the toilet paper beside him into a black metal mask and a black cloak suitable for adults. At the same time, there seemed to be a conflict in the cabin. Bang, bang, bang. Ah. Everyone squat down. Accompanied by several gunshots, exclamations came from the cabin, and a man scolding made the cabin return to silence. In the cabin, 6 adult men wearing masks holding submachine guns or assault rifles stood in the aisle of the cabin, and the passengers and flight attendants around them squatted down with their heads in their hands. "Listen to me, I don't kill people, I just want money. Open the cockpit and let the captain follow my route." A gangster came to the outside of the cockpit with a submachine gun and hit the cockpit door hard. At this time, the cockpit was in chaos. The co-pilot looked panicked. He shouted loudly to the gangsters outside the cockpit, "I don't know why you hijacked the plane, but your behavior is provoking the police of Britain and France. Please stop your illegal behavior immediately, otherwise you will be judged." As he said, the co-pilot urged the captain beside him, "Quick, call the tower and find the nearest airport for emergency landing. Our cockpit door is very strong. They can't get in." The captain nodded quickly, calling the tower while turning around and heading for the nearby airport. Hearing the voice in the cockpit, the gangster shouted frantically, "Trial? I'm bankrupt and owe a lot of debts. I've been dead for a long time. Okay, you don't want to open the door, right? If you don't open the door for 1 minute, I will shoot a tourist. I want to see whether you will arrive at the airport first, or we will kill everyone in the cabin first. At worst, we will die together." The gangster roared. At this moment, Lin En, who had been hiding in the airplane bathroom in advance, understood the whole story. According to the course of history, a financial crisis would occur in Europe in mid-September 1992, causing the pound exchange rate to fall all the way, causing countless business owners to lose their homes and lives. Although it was only August at this time, and there was still more than a month before the pound crisis recorded in history, September refers to the outbreak time of this crisis. As early as July and August, this storm had quietly swept the European market. Strong companies would not be affected at this moment, but some companies that were already poorly managed might have already become victims of the foreplay of this crisis. The gangsters in the cabin were obviously the so-called victims, and they were able to bring this extremely prohibited firearm on board, which meant that there must be their insiders among the airport staff. It can be seen that the influence of the forces they originally belonged to was not small, but it was a pity that they encountered a disaster and were defeated. These gangsters not only lost all their capital, but also owed a lot of debts. In order to survive, they finally chose the road of hijacking, a road of no return. After clarifying all this, Lin En was ready to take action. No matter what the reason for the hijacking, it had nothing to do with Lin En. Lin En only knew that the other party was in the way and hindered his pleasant trip to France. Under the effect of the spell, Lin En, who had transformed into the body of an adult male and put on a black robe and a black metal mask transformed by the transfiguration, quietly opened the door of the bathroom, and his murderous eyes looked in the direction of the bandits. At this moment, a desert eagle was slowly raised, and the dark hole pointed directly at the bandit at the farthest cockpit door. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. Thank you for your support. Chapter 87 Goodbye Green. Bang. A gunshot sounded, and a high-speed rotating bullet shot into the back of the bandit's head in an instant. Then, an explosion sounded, and the bandit's head exploded, turning into a blood mist. The headless body of the bandit, who had lost his head, also fell down powerlessly. Seeing this scene, both the passengers who were squatting with their heads in their hands and the remaining 5 bandits felt very incredible. "Is this a pistol?" a bandit exclaimed in disbelief. A shot exploded the head into a blood mist. "Is this a fucking Barrett?" exclamation mark. "There are 5 of us, and he only has 1 pistol. The advantage is mine." At this time, another bandit shouted loudly. In his opinion, the 5 of them were all holding submachine guns or assault rifles, while Lin En only had a small pistol in his hand. Even if it was more powerful, could it still be better than them? Exclamation mark. I'm afraid that Lin En would be shot into a sieve by them before he could even fire a shot. As the bandit finished speaking, the other 4 bandits all raised their guns and aimed at Lin En. However, these bandits were not killers who had experienced bloody storms. They were just bankrupt entrepreneurs. Otherwise, they would not have killed even 1 person before. If they were mercenaries who killed without blinking an eye, they would probably have to shoot half of the passengers to establish their prestige. Even though these bandits aimed their guns at Lin En, they hesitated for a moment and did not shoot immediately. In their opinion, Lin En, who was pointed at by 5 submachine guns or assault rifles, would definitely give up resistance and surrender. However, they would hesitate, but Lin En would not. Bang, bang. Lin En raised his hand without hesitation and pulled the trigger twice in succession. 2 consecutive enchanted bullets accurately shot into the heads of the 2 bandits. Then the alchemy array was activated, and the violent explosion blew the heads of the 2 bandits into a bloody mist. At this time, it was too late for the remaining 3 bandits to fight back. The 3 gangsters pulled the trigger frantically and shot at Lin En, but Lin En's body seemed to move 2 meters to the right, making all the bullets fall in vain. Bang, bang. 2 more gunshots from the Desert Eagle appeared. These 2 gunshots sounded like the death sickle of the death in the ears of the gangsters. Before they could react, the heads of 2 more gangsters exploded into blood mist. Seeing that all his companions were dead, the remaining gangster quickly dropped his weapon and tried to beg for mercy from Lin En. However, Lin En didn't even look at his movements. After killing the first few gangsters, he moved the muzzle of the gun to the head of the last gangster without any pause and pulled the trigger. After shooting all the gangsters, Lin En looked at the passengers and flight attendants around him who were all squatting with their heads in their hands and dared not look around. He shot the surveillance in the cabin with several shots in succession and then quickly retreated to the bathroom and removed his disguise. It was unknown how long it took before the passengers and flight attendants carefully poked their heads out. After seeing the 6 headless bodies on the ground, they all cried out in shock. They were a little bit unbelievable that all these gangsters were dead and died in this way. Who killed them? Someone asked in horror. I just took a sneak peek and saw a man wearing a black metal mask, but I didn't see where he came from or where he went. It was as if that man had never existed. Another person said a little crazy. He felt like he had seen God, and God saved them. At this time, a well-trained flight attendant walked to the cockpit and told the 2 captains what happened in the cabin. After learning that the gangsters were all shot dead by unknown persons, the 2 captains were a little shocked. In the end, they chose to resume the original route and then let the French police in Paris, the destination, handle the matter on the plane. Until then, Lin En came out of the bathroom on the plane. He removed his disguise and pretended to be scared. He looked at the flight attendant. I just heard gunshots, so I was too scared to come out. What happened just now? Seeing the timid look of this boy who was only 12 or 13 years old, a female flight attendant suddenly overflowed with maternal love. She hurried over, covered Lin En's eyes, prevented him from seeing the bodies on the ground, and then guided Lin En back to his seat. Just now, there were bandits hijacking the plane, but I don't know why they all died. It's okay, the female flight attendant said with some fear. She comforted Lin En who looked very scared. Lin En nodded and made a surprised expression at the same time. Someone hijacked the plane. This is too scary. The female flight attendant nodded thankfully and said with lingering fear, yes, fortunately it's safe. In this way, the plane finally arrived safely at the Paris airport. Almost at the same time, when the plane stopped, more than a dozen fully armed French armed police rushed into the cabin, dragged away the headless bodies of the 6 gangsters, and escorted all passengers and crew members off the plane. Lin En, who was only 12 or 13 years old, would naturally not be suspected by the French police. After the most basic investigation and registration, Lin En left the airport with a backpack on his back. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. I don't know if I can catch up with the door key. Lin En walked quickly. Due to the hijacking incident, the plane arrived in Paris more than an hour later than expected. This made Lin En need to hurry up to find the door key he had applied for before. Yes, as an underage wizard, although Lin En could not apply for a cross-border door key, he still had the right to apply for an ordinary door key. In addition, when Lin En wrote a letter to the French Ministry of Magic to apply for an alchemist, he registered his identity, which made Lin En look up to him, and his application was naturally approved. Lin En almost ran to a closed alley. At the end of the alley was the wall, a dead end, and at the corner was a small plastic trash can. Lin En quickly stepped forward and grabbed the small plastic trash can. Almost a few seconds after he picked up the trash can, Lin En felt a hook hooked on his belly button, and then he flew forward quickly and landed. At this time, he had appeared outside Green's residence. Almost missed it. Lin En wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead. The small plastic trash can just now was the door key he applied for. Fortunately, he ran faster and grabbed it before the door key was triggered. Lin En tidied his clothes, walked forward and knocked on the door. Soon, the door opened, revealing the face of the man inside. "Good afternoon, Mr. Green," Lin En said with a smile. Chapter 88 Human Nature and Temptation. "Good afternoon, Lin. Come in." Green smiled at Lin, opened the door and let Lin in. Lin obediently came to Green's house, which looked very simple, almost no different from an ordinary person's house. There was a sofa, a coffee table and a TV in the living room, and Lin could not see any magic-related factors. After putting down his backpack and sitting side by side with Green on the sofa, Lin went straight to the point and said, "Teacher, I want to learn your ability to make alchemical arrays out of thin air." Hearing this, Green was not surprised. He chuckled and asked, "Did you get the Philosopher's Stone?" Green had expected that Lin would get the Philosopher's Stone. After all, before the beginning of the school year, he went to Hogwarts according to Mr. Flamel's instructions, to tell Dumbledore about Mr. Flamel's decision. Lin nodded, rolled up the sleeve of his right arm, and lightly touched his right arm with his wand. A metal arm guard as thin as silk appeared on Lin's right arm. Lin En took off the demon god authority and handed it to Green. Green held the demon god authority and sensed the alchemical power in it. He kept exclaiming, "What a great idea! Using the combination of magic alchemy and array alchemy, an alchemical product that can serve as a bridge between magic power and the wizard's body can be refined, allowing wizards to draw external magic power for their own use when casting spells. What's its name?" Green returned the demon god authority to Lin En and asked. Lin En put the devil's authority back on his right arm and said softly, "Devil's authority, because when I use it, I feel as if I have the power of God." Green nodded slightly and said, "Gaining too much power in a short period of time will indeed produce this illusion. Devil's authority is a good name." Then, Green raised his head again and asked, "Do you plan to release this alchemical product to the public?" "I think as long as you replace some precious metals with cheaper materials and reduce the engraving of some alchemical arrays, you can make a weakened version of the Devil's authority that can only absorb the magic power of the magic crystal." As Green said, if Lin En wanted, he could make a weakened version of the Devil's authority and then release it to the public to make a profit. You know, the French alchemists today are either drowned or drowned. The reason for this extremely serious polarization between the rich and the poor is that some alchemists can invent their own alchemical products and make a lot of money by selling them, and then use this as capital for more research and development, while some alchemists cannot invent their own products and eventually become poor and destitute, and even have no capital to buy alchemical materials. Of course, not all alchemists will publish their new inventions in full. Just like the forbidden magic stone invented by Green, he selectively deleted the content of the array alchemy, making it a pure product of the magic alchemy, and published it, after weakening a lot of its functions. for this kind of already powerful alchemical product, even if it is weakened layer by layer. After the announcement, Green still won countless honors and even became a member of the Chocolate Frog Card. Ordinary wizards have almost no demand for alchemical products such as the forbidden magic stone used to protect certain important items, but they can still make it reach such a status. If the weakened version of the demon power is announced, you can imagine how much wealth and status Lin En will gain from it. After all, every alchemist can make magic crystals, which makes magic crystals a popular alchemical product. If the weakened version of the demon god's authority is really released, almost every wizard with the weakened version of the demon god's authority can use it to improve his magic level. This is an irresistible temptation for any wizard. They can even change the supply and demand relationship of magic crystals, making a large number of alchemists rich. It can be seen how terrifying the demon god's authority that Lin En accidentally invented is. However, facing the temptation of wealth and status, Lin En shook his head and said, "No, I don't plan to make it public for the time being. If the function of the power of the demon god is known to everyone, then whenever I perform advanced magic that is far beyond my level, then anyone with a discerning eye will be able to see whose power I borrowed, the magic stone. Human nature is greedy. I don't want to make myself a target of public criticism unless I have enough power like my master to ignore all potential threats. Therefore, I may announce a weakened version of the product, like you did in the future, but not now." Lin En said so. Green showed a satisfied look. In fact, his question just now was just a test of Lin En. If Lin En was really confused by wealth and status, then as a teacher, he would naturally stand up to point out the maze and tell him the pros and cons of the cruel reality. But it is obvious that Lin En has an understanding of human nature and is cautious about reality, which makes Green very satisfied. "Very good. Come with me. I will teach you the technique of refining alchemical arrays out of thin air." Green stood up with a smile and walked towards the inner room. Lin En followed Green, but found that Green stopped at the door of the bedroom. Green pulled out his wand, gently tapped the door handle of the bedroom, and then signaled Lin En to grab his hand with his eyes. Lin En seemed to understand something, stretched out his hand to grab Green, and Green raised his hand to hold the door handle. The moment the door handle was touched, Lin En felt a dizzy feeling, and then the two of them appeared in a secret room with silver metal walls on all sides. "This is a special space I built inside the house using alchemy, and cast the traceless extension spell to expand its internal space twice, and finally reinforced its spatial stability through alchemy. We can do alchemy and even fight here," Green introduced concisely. Lin En nodded slightly. It's not like he had never used alchemy to create space before. The internal space of the suitcase where Hagrid's little dragon lived was created using this method. He also knew how to expand the space twice through the traceless extension spell, but the space he created could not withstand strong magic fluctuations. As long as the magic fluctuations in the space exceeded the upper limit of its stable value, the space would likely collapse and disintegrate. Therefore, Green's steps to strengthen the spatial stability of this secret room are extremely important. Please recommend, reward and monthly votes. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89. In a moment of thought, a formation was formed out of thin air. After arriving at the secret room, Green began to teach Lin En. First, Green taught the secret method of engraving the alchemical array without a chisel. This secret method requires strong magic power as support. Lin En, who has the power of the magic god and the magic stone as an energy source, naturally has no shortage of magic power. Lin En raised his right hand holding the magic wand, and a strange magic wave spread out. A steady stream of magic power was injected into Lin En's body from the magic stone through the power of the magic god. A magic power with extremely strong absorption was slowly spit out from the magic wand and condensed on a metal plate in front of Lin En. Very good. This is the first step. Let the magic power be strongly absorbed on the alchemical object so that it will not dissipate. Green nodded slightly. Under Green's teaching, Lin En gradually became familiar with the alchemical method of using the magic wand instead of the chisel. He soon drew an alchemical array on the metal plate with the magic wand. Yes, draw. Unlike the method of using a carving knife to carve magic power into the surface of the alchemical object, the magic power spit out by the magic wand is absorbed on the surface of the metal plate by its extremely strong adsorption, just like drawing on paper. Therefore, it seems more appropriate to describe this alchemical method as drawing. Next, just like you cast spells without a wand, try to get rid of the magic wand and use your body to release magic power with the same adsorption. Green continued to instruct. Although the teaching has been successful, by reaching the step of using the magic wand to replace the carving knife, Green has higher requirements for his disciples. Only when Lin En can still refine the alchemical array with his bare hands, while relying only on his body, can he have the ability to rely on alchemy to save his life in any situation. Lin En nodded, put down the magic wand, and then tried to condense the magic power on his fingertips. Alchemy without a magic wand is similar to the magic system's wandless casting. Lin En, who has mastered the silent and wandless casting skills, has a natural advantage in learning alchemy. In just over half an hour, Lin En was able to refine an alchemical array without relying on any external objects. Okay, the next step is to refine an alchemical array out of thin air. Green nodded with satisfaction and said, compared with refining an alchemical array without external objects, the difficulty of refining an alchemical array in the air is completely not at the same level. It's like the former requires you to write with your hand dipped in ink, while the latter requires you to write in the air. Refining an alchemical array out of thin air requires us to condense the magic power in the air without dissipating it. In the absence of a carrier, we can only let the magic power itself become the carrier. In other words, we need to compress the tangible but immaterial magic power into tangible and material magic power. Under Green's narration, Lin En gradually understood the key skills of this secret method, which is to compress a large amount of magic power into a small ball of magic power, so that this ball of magic power is dense enough to become a real substance. However, if you force the magic power to be condensed, the magic power required to reach the level of tangibility is huge. If you want to condense a magic power the size of an apple, you may need to consume a magic power group the size of a swimming pool. At this time, you need to use the secret method taught by Green. Under the effect of the secret method, Lin En can condense the magic power more easily. Lin En waved his magic wand, and a thread of magic power flew through the air at a high speed, and finally formed an alchemical rune. That's it. You already have the ability to refine alchemical arrays out of thin air. As for practicing, you can wait until tomorrow. I'm afraid you have reached your limit. Seeing that Lin En had drawn the alchemical rune, Green decisively stopped Lin En's next move and pointed to the fine sweat on Lin En's forehead and said so. Hearing this, Lin En dispersed the alchemical rune in the air with a sense of relief, stumbled and sat on the ground, gasping for breath. Just as Green said, after these 7 or 8 hours of study, he has reached his limit. Although he has the magic stone to provide him with energy, carrying excessive magic power for a long time has already put a great burden on Lin's body. Lin looked very tired, but his face was full of excitement. After 2.5 days of rest, Lin and Green came to this secret room again. Lin decisively skipped the step of using the magic wand to refine the alchemy array out of thin air, and chose to start refining the alchemy array directly without a wand. Lin waved his hands with ease, and golden magic threads spurted out from the fingertips of his 10 fingers, interweaving with each other in the air, turning into alchemy runes, and then more golden threads spurted out, connecting these golden alchemy runes in series or parallel to form a complete alchemy array. Lin estimated his body's carrying capacity, increased the rate of absorbing the magic power of the magic stone, and refined 2 alchemy arrays out of thin air again. At this time, a total of 3 alchemical arrays were suspended beside Lin En, as if they were guarding their king. Come on, try to attack me. Green stood dozens of meters away, and waved to Lin En. Lin En nodded slightly, and as his mind moved, the 3 alchemical arrays actually shot out countless golden beams like machine guns. The golden beams fired by these 3 alchemical arrays were the same as those of Lin En's alchemical floating gun, but these 3 alchemical arrays did not need to spend a lot of time to charge like the alchemical floating gun. If the alchemical floating gun can only fire a golden beam every 30 seconds, then the alchemical array around Lin En can fire up to 30 golden beams per second with sufficient magic power supply. Countless golden beams turned into meteors all over the sky and shot towards Green. Faced with such a terrifying attack, Green remained calm. He waved his wand, and 3 alchemical arrays formed around him in an instant, emitting powerful golden beams that collided with and offset Lin's golden beams. Seeing Green so easily resolve his attack, Lin couldn't help but sigh. He was indeed his teacher. The alchemical array, that he needed to spend more than 10 minutes to refine, was formed in an instant by the other party with just one thought. It seemed that, after refining the power of the demon god, Lin's estimate that he could fight against Teacher Green without losing was still too high. After all, even if he had a powerful silent and wandless fire spell, plus the magic stone as a magic power supply, he was afraid that before he could launch an attack, the alchemical array formed by the other parties thought would be able to beat him into a sieve. Chapter 90. I don't buy it. What about you? In the following week, Lin En went to the secret room every day under Green's guidance to practice the secret method of refining alchemical arrays out of thin air. After continuous practice, although Lin En could not refine alchemical arrays in a single thought like Green, the time spent on refining an alchemical array was changed from more than 10 minutes to 1 or 2 minutes. However, Lin En could only do this. No matter how much Lin En practiced, his speed of refining alchemical arrays out of thin air was stuck in the range of 1 to 2 minutes. After practicing the skills of refining alchemical arrays, Lin En also learned from Teacher Green some alchemical methods such as using alchemy to strengthen the stability of space, which benefited Lin En a lot. Soon, more than a week passed, and there was only the last half a month left before the start of school. Similarly, this was the time when Lin En planned to return to the UK and go to Diagon Alley to buy study materials. See you next year, teacher. In Green's cabin, Lin put on his backpack, grabbed a worn-out teacup on the coffee table that didn't fit in with the other teacups, and said goodbye to Green. After learning that Lin had encountered a hijacking on the way to France, Green felt very regretful and thought that he should have personally gone to Roll Manor to pick Lin up. Now that Lin was planning to return to the UK, Green specifically applied to the French Ministry of Magic for a cross-border portkey for Lin to use, using his identity as a famous French alchemist. Soon it was time for the portkey to be triggered, and Lin only felt his belly button being hooked, and then the whole person flew high. When Lin landed, he was already outside the leaky cauldron. Because the first thing Lin had to do when he returned to the UK was to buy textbooks for the next school year. When Green applied for the cross-border portkey, he thoughtfully set the destination directly outside the leaky cauldron. Senior Owl. At this time, a somewhat surprised voice sounded not far from Lin. Looking over, it was Irina who spoke. Irina, who had just returned from a trip to Scandinavia, was also planning to go to Diagon Alley to buy textbooks. When she arrived at the leaky cauldron, she saw Lin appearing out of thin air. Senior Luo, Irina asked curiously, are you apparating? Lin shook her head and said, I just came back from another place and took the portkey. Irina nodded thoughtfully and then invited, Senior Luo, you are also here to buy textbooks, right? Why don't we go together? By the way, I also want to thank you for using alchemy to block my traces. It helped me a lot. Facing Irina's invitation, Lin readily agreed. So, the two walked into the leaky cauldron together. But just as they were about to walk towards the backyard, Irina was stopped by old Tom, who was wiping a dirty wine glass with one hand. I remember you, little witch. Did you kick the trash can crooked last year? Old Tom stared into Irina's eyes and questioned. Hearing this, Irina felt guilty. She said quickly, I'm sorry. I was confused at the time. If I caused any loss to you, boss, I'm willing to compensate you. Last year, she came to Diagon Alley for the first time. After seeing the classic scenes in the original book and recalling some hot memes on the internet, she couldn't help but kick the trash can. Unexpectedly, she was recognized by old Tom today, in front of Senior Roll. It's so embarrassing. Irina was a little embarrassed and lowered her head. However, old Tom didn't mean to pursue the responsibility. He waved his hand and said, don't do it next time. At this time, Lin En looked at Irina, who was embarrassed, with a strange look. Good guy. Last year I was thinking who was so resinless. Irina, pay attention to the resin. Pay attention to the resin. Lin En said in a teasing tone. Even though Irina was outgoing, she didn't dare to talk at this moment. However, her botricle, Kingv, poked her head out of her school bag and waved to Lin En, which was considered a greeting. This is a botricle. Is it your pet? Lin En asked in surprise. Seeing that the matter of kicking the trash can was finally exposed, Irina nodded seriously and said, yes, I met it when I was traveling in Scandinavia during the summer vacation. It wanted to follow me, so I brought it back. Lin En looked at King, who took out a rustic pet from her backpack and nodded slightly. It seems that Irina has raised this botricle well. It's white and fat. Lin En and Irina purchased items for the next school year according to the list given by Hogwarts, and their last stop in the place where they spent the most money was Flourish and Blots. In the magic world, perhaps the price of magic book is enough for a wizard to buy several ounces of dragon liver. When the two arrived outside Flourish and Blots, they found that the store seemed to be crowded with people. There were a lot of wizards standing on tiptoe at the door of the store, looking inside. In front of the window upstairs of Flourish and Blots, the two saw a large banner with 4 lines of words on it. Gilderoy Lockhart's autobiography The Magician will be signed and sold from 12:30 to 16:30 this afternoon. Looking at the banner, the two finally understood what was going on here. It seems that Lockhart, that idiot, is signing and selling books. Are you going to buy the Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook this year? Irina looked at Lin and tilted her head. In Irina's subconscious, she had already regarded Lin as a time traveler like herself. In her opinion, Lin also understood Lockhart's true face. Of course, this was indeed the case. Looking at Irina's cute head tilt, Lin En spread his hands and said, no, what about you? Irina nodded and said, I won't buy it either. Hearing this, the two smiled at each other. As for the books written by Lockhart, it is still fun to read them as novels, but if you want to learn the knowledge of Defense Against the Dark Arts from them, then you should just go to bed and not daydream! Besides, if they want to read novels, wouldn't it be better to go to the Muggle world and read novels that cost a few dollars a copy! Why do they need to buy magic books that cost dozens of gold galleons! At this moment, Lockhart's voice came from Flourish and Blots. Ladies and gentlemen, Lockhart said loudly, waving his hand to quiet everyone. What an unusual moment. I want to take this wonderful occasion to announce a small thing that I have been suppressing for some time and have not said it. When young Harry walked into Flourish and Blots today, he just wanted to buy my autobiography. I'm willing to give him this book for free on the spot. Lockhart said loudly. But he doesn't know. Lockhart's voice continued. He will soon get something more valuable than my humble work magic me. In fact, he and his classmates will get a real me who can do magic. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely happy and proud to announce that this September, I will become the Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In Flourish and Blots bookstore, Harry was reluctantly held by Lockhart as a tool to hype his own fame. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. Thank you for your support. Chapter 91 Ice Crystal Wood. Harry? Seeing Harry being held by Lockhart in Flourish and Blots, Irina was stunned. She hesitated whether to rescue her friend. However, Irina thought that with her fame of repelling Voldemort's remnant in Hogwarts, she might be temporarily captured by Lockhart to be used as a hype tool, so she decided to let Harry enjoy the happiness alone. After a while, Lin and Irina saw Harry staggering to the wall with a thick stack of books, and then poured all the books signed by Lockhart into Ginny's cauldron as a gift for his future wife. However, just as Harry and Ginny were about to talk, Malfoy, who loved and hated Harry, appeared and mocked Harry. The quarrel of the younger generation soon alarmed their elders. Lin and Irina watched Lucius Malfoy and Arthur Weasley fighting in the bookstore. Should we go to mediate? Irina said hesitantly. Lin shrugged and said, Mr. Malfoy is my roommate's father, and Mr. Weasley is my good friend's father. It's not appropriate for me to help either of them. But aren't you a friend of Harry and Ron? Go and help them. Hearing Lin's words, Irina nodded, drew her wand, and squeezed into Flourish and Blots. Separate left and right. Irina waved her wand, and an invisible magic force separated Lucius and Arthur. However, as a good friend of Harry and Ron, she naturally had to take sides. After being hit by the separation spell, Arthur just stumbled back 2 steps, while Lucius, who was also hit by the separation spell, flew backwards and hit the bookshelf behind him. With Irina separating them, these 2 self-respecting adults naturally felt embarrassed to fight again. "Here, little girl, take your book. I'm afraid this is the best thing your father can give you," Lucius said viciously, throwing a worn-out book into Ginny's arms. Lucius waved to Draco and rushed out of the store. "You shouldn't pay attention to him, Arthur. This guy is so bad." At this time, Hagrid, who was originally going to persuade them to stop fighting, came over. He smiled at Irina and then said to Arthur. Hagrid led everyone out of Flourish and Blots. The clerks seemed to want to stop them and compensate for the losses, but after seeing Hagrid's huge body, the clerks backed off. "Irina, thanks to you, otherwise Weasley's old face would be completely lost." Madly furious Mrs. Weasley glared at Arthur fiercely and then smiled at Irina like a Sichuan opera face changing. Just as Mrs. Weasley was blaming Arthur, the Botricle King in Irina's backpack poked her head out and looked around curiously. Hagrid, who already loved magical animals, noticed the Botricle in Irina's backpack. He was a little surprised and said, "Botricle, is this yours, Irina?" Seeing that Hagrid noticed Kingv, Irina simply stopped hiding it. She carefully held Kingv in her palm and introduced her to everyone. "This is Kingv, the little girl I met when I was traveling in Scandinavia during the holidays." "Kingv? This seems to be an oriental name," Arthur said. Irina nodded and said, "Yes, the reason I gave her this name is that Kingv is not an ordinary Botricle, but a Botricle whose bloodline has mutated and evolved new abilities. As for the new abilities, I won't talk about them on the street." In the more than half a month of getting along with Kingv, she had already regarded her as her partner. In addition, Kingv was a female Botricle, so Irina called Kingv she. Hearing this, everyone stopped talking about Kingv. It was not uncommon for Botricles to live with wizards, but they had never heard of Botricles with evolved bloodlines. Such secrets could not be discussed on the street. At this time, Irina saw Lin En coming out of Flourish and Blots. "When you went to stop the fight just now, I went to buy this year's books, and I bought your copy as well," Lin En said, throwing a bag full of magic books to Irina. Irina opened the bag and found that except for the Defense Against the Dark Arts book, all other textbooks were complete. She thanked him in surprise. "Ah, thank you. Here, this is the money to buy books." At this time, Mrs. Weasley greeted Lin with a smile. "Good afternoon, child. Did you have a good summer vacation?" Lin, who knew his true life, nodded calmly in the face of Mrs. Weasley's care and said, "Very good. Thank you for your concern." Mrs. Weasley continued, "We have finished shopping and are ready to go back. Would you like to visit the Burrow, Lin and Irina?" Lin shook her head and said, "No, I just returned from a trip to France and haven't gone home to report to my mother yet." Mrs. Weasley looked at Irina. Irina hesitated for a moment, but still declined. "I have to go to Ollivander's one shop later. I'm afraid it will take a lot of time, so I won't bother you." Hearing this, Mrs. Weasley nodded with some regret, and she didn't say much. So, Lin left in another direction, while Irina came to Ollivander's one shop alone. "Good afternoon, beautiful lady. Oh, it's you, Miss Lovell." After noticing someone coming in, Mr. Ollivander came forward to greet her. Irina nodded and said, "Good afternoon, Mr. Ollivander." Mr. Ollivander said, "I'm sorry that I couldn't choose a suitable one for you last time, Miss Lovell. I don't know why you came here. If you want to try my new wand, you can follow me." Irina shook her head and said, "No, Mr. Ollivander. I want you to see if this wood can be used to make a wand." As she said that, Irina took out the branch of the mysterious magic tree that the green girl gave her in the Scandinavian mountains. Seeing this magical branch, Mr. Ollivander's eyes lit up. A branch that can emit frost must be a magical tree, but why have I never heard of a magical tree that can release frost? Mr. Ollivander stroked the branch, as if he was stroking some rare treasure, but there was a hint of doubt on his face. Irina explained, "This is a magical tree I encountered during my holiday travel. It should be a species that has never been discovered." Mr. Ollivander nodded thoughtfully and then said, "It's actually a brand new species. Miss Lowell, as the discoverer of this brand new species of magical tree, you have the right to give it a name." Irina was stunned, then she lowered her head and pondered for a while and said, "Then call it Ice Crystal Wood." Chapter 92 Eternal Ice Palace, the ultimate power of ice. So, can this branch of Ice Crystal Wood be used as the body of magic wand? Irina asked. Mr. Ollivander said, "Of course, Miss Lovell. There is no material more suitable for making a magic wand than this. However, what kind of wand core should be used for this only Ice Crystal Wood wand? Dragon's heartstring or unicorn hair? It's really hard to decide. The wand with unicorn hair as the wand core has a strong resistance to black magic and is suitable for children with a kind heart. In Mr. Ollivander's opinion, unicorn hair is definitely suitable for Irina, there is no doubt about it. However, the magic wand made with unicorn hair as the wand core also has a disadvantage. That is, its upper limit is low, and it is difficult to cast extremely powerful spells. If the holder of the magic wand wants to cast black magic, it will also be rejected by the unicorn hair wand core, which in turn limits the strength of the wizard. Dragon's heartstring. Irina suddenly said. Although unicorn hair is more suitable for her now, she understands that in the magic world, only absolute strength can allow her to protect her family from being bullied, and a wand with unicorn feathers as the core will tie her hands and feet, which is what she does not want to see. Seeing that the owner of the Ice Crystal Wood has spoken, Mr. Ollivander simply stopped hesitating and took out a fairly fresh dragon heartstring from the material bag. This period is the beginning of the school year. Mr. Ollivander generally makes enough wands in advance to sell to young wizards and will not make new wands during this period. But facing the new wand material of Ice Crystal Wood, as a wand maker, he naturally finds it difficult to resist this temptation. So, Mr. Ollivander took the Ice Crystal Wood and the dragon heartstring and walked towards the workplace. Fortunately, it was already mid to late August. Most of the young wizards who were about to enter Hogwarts had already bought their own wands in July, and the number of new young wizards appearing in the magic world every year was not too large. Therefore, during the period when Mr. Ollivander was making wands, no one came into the store to disturb him. Irina watched Mr. Ollivander making a wand for her, and she waited patiently. Time passed by, and before she knew it, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. Mr. Ollivander had been working for more than 5 hours. "It's done. Come and try it, Miss Lowell. Ice Crystal Wood, 13¼ inches, dragon's heartstring, and the material is flexible," Mr. Ollivander said happily. He gently blew away the sawdust on the new wand, then carefully held up the new wand and handed it to Irina. The new wand looked very gorgeous. Irina could see subtle ice blow lines on the surface of the wand. These ice blow lines were not carved by Mr. Ollivander, but were naturally possessed by the Ice Crystal Wood. Irina's heart was beating fast, and she could feel the kind emotions that the wand sent to her. She suppressed her excitement, raised the wand, and waved it gently. I saw an ice blow light bursting out from the top of the wand, and endless cold air rushed in all directions, freezing everything in Ollivander's wand shop into ice sculptures in an instant. Not only that, the extremely exquisite ice continued to condense in Ollivander's wand shop, and it actually condensed into ice in the shape of chandeliers in this small room. It was as if this Ollivander's wand shop was no longer that small shop, but an eternal ice palace made of 10,000 years of ice. Under the attack of the power of ice, Irina, who had a strong affinity for ice element, was fine, but Mr. Ollivander in front of her was almost frozen into an ice sculpture, with only his eyes and mouth able to move normally. Collect. Miss Lowell. Mr. Ollivander wanted to cry, but had no tears. He just asked Irina to try the new wand, but he didn't expect to turn his wand shop into an ice palace. Fortunately, Irina, who already had the power to control ice, was able to use her mind to retract the ice. Otherwise the entire Ollivander's wand shop would have been destroyed. "I didn't expect this wand to be so powerful, or did my affinity for ice stimulate its original power?" Irina looked at the Ollivander's wand shop, which had been restored to its original state, with some lingering fear. She knew that with her own magic level, it was impossible to release this magic like the creator. It seems that this Ice Crystal Wood is definitely not an ordinary magical tree. "It's perfect, Miss Lovell. This is definitely the most suitable wand for you. Mr. Ollivander said happily. Irina smiled sweetly. She seemed to have thought of something and took out her original wand from her bosom. Since I already have a wand that really suits me, I'll give this wand back to you, Mr. Ollivander. Hearing this, Mr. Ollivander shook his head and said, since I said I would give it to you, then it is for you. However, this ice crystal wood wand is not cheap. The previous ones were sold to young wizards at the price of 7 gold galleons because of subsidies from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and the Ministry of Magic, but now you are no longer a freshman. Irina nodded and said, I understand. How many gold galleons does this ice crystal wood wand cost? As Mr. Ollivander said, the reason why the wands here are sold to young wizards at the price of 7 gold galleons is that they are subsidized by Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and the Ministry of Magic. Otherwise, how could a wand that can accompany a wizard throughout his life be priced at less than 1/3 of the price of a magic book? Exclamation mark. Mr. Ollivander cleared his throat and said, the price of this ice crystal wood wand is 198 gold galleons, but since this unique ice crystal wood was provided by you, Miss Lovell, and I have gained a lot from using new materials to make the wand, I will only charge you 68 gold galleons. Hearing Mr. Ollivander's words, Irina was a little surprised. Her family was only middle class, and it was difficult for her to provide too much money. For her, the price of 68 gold galleons was definitely not cheap. After all, according to the exchange rate of 1:5 between gold galleons and pounds, 68 gold galleons were equivalent to 340 pounds. Fortunately, Mr. Ollivander gave her a discount and did not charge her 198 gold galleons, otherwise his small treasury would not be able to take out so many gold galleons. Irina took out the gold galleons saved from Lockhart's defense against the dark arts textbook fees, counted out 68, and handed them to Mr. Ollivander. Thanks to Lockhart, I saved more than 100 gold galleons. Irina put away her new magic wand and thought happily. Please recommend, collect and vote for me. Thank you for your support. Chapter 93, Damn. Hello Bike. When Irina got her own wand, Lin had already found Gale, the house elf waiting for her at the junction of Diagon Alley and Nocturne Alley, and returned to Row Castle through Gale's apparition. Now there is only half a month left before the start of school. In these 10 days, Lin practiced magic and alchemy during the day, and went to the streets of the Muggle world with her mother Rowena in the afternoon. It was so pleasant. 3 days before the start of school, Lin plunged into her study again, and spent an afternoon refining a wooden box. There were 2 locks hanging on the front of the wooden box. One of them felt slightly hot to the touch, while the other exuded a cold breath. These 2 locks were originally just the most common combination locks in the Muggle world. Under Lin's alchemical enchantment, they could not be pried by magic or violence. Once the password was entered incorrectly, or the lock opener wanted to forcibly destroy the combination lock, the box would be completely locked, and could never be opened again. Of course, in order to prevent the wooden box from being damaged, Lin En also enchanted the wooden box with many defensive alchemy arrays. Even a powerful explosion spell could not blow up the wooden box. But what is this wooden box used for? Rowena asked in confusion. Lin En spent an afternoon to tinker with such an unknown wooden box, which made Rowena a little strange. Lin En stuffed the locked wooden box into his school bag, spread his hands, and said, "This is what I will use after school starts. Unfortunately, it took too long, and I don't have time to go out and play today. Let's go out early tomorrow morning. School is about to start, and I'm too lazy to cram at the last minute." Rowena nodded happily. Time passed quickly, and soon it was the first day of school. Lin En arrived at King's Cross Station through Gale's apparition, and walked through the partition wall between the 9th and 10th platforms with a normal look, and boarded the Hogwarts Express. Like the previous 2 times, he came to the innermost carriage of the train. 10 minutes later, Irina opened the door of this compartment and walked in. "Good morning, Senior Luoer." Irina greeted, put down her luggage, and sat down opposite Lin En. After fighting side by side at the end of last year, and buying books in Diagon Alley, the 2 seemed to be more familiar with each other than before. Not long after, Hermione and the Weir Lightwinds also came to this compartment one after another, and the 5 of them just filled the compartment. "Well, did we forget something?" Irina looked out and glanced at the Hogwarts Express that was about to depart and said with some doubt. She always felt that she had forgotten something. Did you bring your textbooks and magic materials? Hermione helped Irina check. Irina checked her school bag, then gently touched the obviously bulging pocket and said affirmatively, I've brought them all, and King Viz also in my pocket. Then there shouldn't be anything you forgot, right? Hermione scratched her head. Let's talk about it when you remember it. Irina nodded. Yeah, it's probably not an important thing. The train started slowly and headed north. After a while, the fat woman selling snacks walked into the compartment with a cart. Like before, most of these snacks were imported from Honeydukes. However, in the previous 2 school years, Lin had used the Marauder's map with the Weirlie twins to go to Hogsmeade Village. He had long been tired of some of Honeydukes' snacks, so he only bought a piece of cauldron cake that could fill his stomach. Irina bought a lot of sweets and shared them with everyone. Thanks to Lockhart, I have money to buy snacks. Irina took advantage of Hermione's eating and winked at Lin and whispered. Irina knew that Hermione was currently a fan of Lockhart, so Irina deliberately avoided her and didn't let her hear that she was secretly making up stories about her idol. Hearing this, Lin En couldn't help but laugh out loud. But I don't think he will mind. Lin En smiled and whispered. Just as the two of them were flirting, a burst of exclamations suddenly came from the next carriage. Just when everyone was confused, Hermione also exclaimed, look, outside the window. Everyone immediately leaned out of the window to look and saw a blue car flying in the air side by side with the Hogwarts Express, and Harry and Ron were in this flying car. However, Harry didn't look good. A roll of the flying car threw him out of the car. He was hanging in the air, holding onto the door tightly. This is a consequence of not wearing a seatbelt. Driving irregularly, relatives shed tears. Lin En couldn't help but shook his head. Fuck, hello bike. At this time, Irina looked at Harry and Ron in the sky and couldn't help but exclaimed. She finally remembered what she had forgotten before. She forgot about Harry and Ron. Irina knew that Harry and Ron were sealed by the house elf Dobby with magic between the 9th and 10th stations, so they chose to take the flying car to catch the Hogwarts Express. During the summer vacation, she was still thinking about whether to save these two beginners and let them get on the Hogwarts Express normally, but she didn't expect that she had too much fun during the summer vacation and had forgotten about it. Wingardium Leviosa. Irina quickly leaned out of the window of the train and cast a levitation spell on Harry. After getting the most suitable wand for herself, the power of all Irina's spells was improved by a level. Harry flew back to the car in an instant under the effect of the levitation spell. Because Irina used too much force, Harry's head hit the roof of the car hard and hit a big bump. Fasten your seatbelts. Irina shouted. Harry and Ron in the car heard Irina's words, and they quickly fastened their seatbelts to avoid being thrown out by the willful flying car again. How dare they? How dare they? They will definitely be expelled by Professor McGonagall. It's over. Hermione stamped her feet anxiously. Having read the laws of the wizarding world, she naturally understood how many rules Harry and Ron had violated. Although Hermione was no longer so opposed to violating school rules under the subtle influence of everyone last year, this time Harry and Ron violated not only school rules, but also the laws of the wizarding world. Seeing that her good friend was about to be expelled, how could Hermione not be anxious? Exclamation mark. Don't worry, with Professor Dumbledore here, Harry and the others will not be expelled. Don't forget that we faced Voldemort 3 months ago and received Professor Dumbledore's praise. Even if the Ministry of Magic wants to expel Harry and the others, they have to consider public opinion. Irina patted Hermione on the back and comforted her. Chapter 94. Damn, Diddy Taxi. With Irina's comfort, Hermione was not as anxious as before, but there was still a hint of worry on her face. Time passed by, and as the sun set, Hogwarts Castle gradually appeared in everyone's sight. The Hogwarts Express slowly stopped, and the broadcast requiring the young wizards to change their wizard robes also sounded in each carriage. On the other side, Ron drove the flying car into the scope of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry like a sky-high monkey. At this time, Ron found that the flying car seemed to be out of control, no longer listening to his command, but falling towards the ground. You know, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, as the only magic school in the UK, has the most powerful security magic in the British magic world. If any flying car can easily drive into Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, then Hogwarts Castle cannot be said to be safe. Therefore, almost at the moment when the flying car drove in, it was disturbed by the powerful magic magnetic field. The terrifying magic impacted the body of the flying car, causing most of the functions of the flying car to fail. No. Stop. Stop. Harry and Ron exclaimed. Right in front of them was the Homping Willow planted in Hogwarts. However, the flying car disturbed by magic would not do what they wanted. Under the desperate eyes of the two, the flying car crashed into the Homping Willow. Crack. A loud sound of metal hitting trees came, and the flying car carrying Harry and Ron crashed into the thick tree trunk and fell to the ground. The body of the flying car shook violently. Thick black smoke came out from under the deformed hood. Fortunately, the seatbelt protected Harry from hitting the roof again. "Are you okay, Ron?" Harry asked anxiously. Ron said in a trembling voice, "It's over. My wand. Look at my wand." The wand in Ron's hand was almost broken into two pieces by the previous collision. The top of the wand drooped down, with only a few pieces of wood connected. Just as Harry wanted to continue speaking, a violent collision sounded. The huge force was like a bull that deformed the car door beside Harry, causing Harry to crash into Ron. Then, another violent collision sound came. This time it was the roof that was hit. The entire roof of the flying car was dented by this violent collision. "What's going on?" Ron gasped and stared at the windshield. Harry turned his head and just saw a branch as thick as a python hitting the glass. Harry finally saw the murderer who smashed the car. It was the tree that the car hit that was attacking them. Its trunk was bent into a bow shape, and the knotty branches hit every part of the car body that it could reach. Ron screamed, and another twisted thick branch smashed a big hole in his car door. Countless small branches as thick as finger joints launched a hail of violent knocks, shaking the windshield. A branch as thick as a battering ram was pounding the roof of the car frantically. At the same time, far outside the main gate of Hogwarts Castle, a group of young wizards looked at the scene of the Homping Willow beating a car hundreds of meters away and fell into silence. "Fuck, did he taxi?" Looking at this familiar scene, Lin En subconsciously burst into swear words and secretly gave a thumbs up to the Homping Willow in his heart. At this time, the castle gate was opened, and the young wizards withdrew their gazes and walked into the castle in an orderly manner. On the Homping Willow side, the flying car suddenly started successfully, taking Harry and Ron out of the attack range of the Homping Willow. But then, Harry and Ron and their luggage were thrown out by the flying car that seemed to have become a spirit, and then the flying car left the two behind and drove away. Flying car, oil the road. Harry held Hedwig's cage, looking confused. This car seems to have a strong sense of self-management. Ron also stood there in a daze, muttering, "You said you were an automatic transmission." After releasing the flying car, Harry and Ron dragged their luggage towards the oak door of the castle. The two of them came to the bright windows of the castle. At this time, the sorting ceremony of this year had already begun in the hall. Countless candles stopped in the air, illuminating the 4 long tables filled with people, making the golden plates and goblets sparkle. The ceiling was full of stars, and this enchanted ceiling could always reflect the sky outside. Over a densely packed black pointed wizard hats, Harry and Ron saw the first-year freshmen queuing up and walking into the hall nervously. Ron's sister Ginny was among them, and her red hair, which was unique to the Weasley family, was very conspicuous. At the same time, Professor McGonagall was placing the sorting hat on the familiar 4-cornered stool. Wait. Harry noticed something was wrong. There's an empty seat in the teacher's seat. Where is Snape? Hearing this, Ron also found that the seat that originally belonged to Professor Snape was now empty. He said hopefully, maybe he's sick. Harry and Ron have always disliked Professor Snape, just like many elementary and middle school students dislike their teachers who like to delay classes. Harry also speculated maliciously, maybe he left because he didn't become the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. Ron nodded in agreement, maybe he was fired. You know, everyone hates him. Maybe he's waiting to hear from you two why you didn't take the Hogwarts Express to school. But at this moment, a cold voice came from behind the two of them, making them feel like they were falling into an ice cave. Harry and Ron felt themselves stiff. They turned their heads repeatedly and saw Professor Snape who looked like a big black bat, looking at them with a sinister look. "Follow me," Professor Snape said coldly. So, Harry and Ron were taken away by Professor Snape. In the hall, the sorting ceremony had ended. After Professor Dumbledore stood up and gave a speech, he announced the start of the opening dinner. The sound of knives and forks colliding rang out in the hall. Both freshmen and old students were picking up various delicacies on the plates. Freshmen were enjoying the delicious food they had never seen before, while old students who were more familiar with Hogwarts were seizing the most generous dinner that only happened 4 times a year. The opening dinner, Halloween dinner, Christmas dinner and year-end dinner are absolutely not to be missed for every little wizard who has spent a full year in Hogwarts Castle. At the Gryffindor table, Hermione had no appetite because she was worried about her 2 stupid sons, but Irina stuffed a big chicken leg into Hermione's mouth and made her chew it subconsciously. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. Thank you for your support. Chapter 95, Animal and Plant Affinity. After the start of term dinner, Hermione was relieved to learn that Harry and Ron had not been expelled. The next day, Hermione was sipping milk from a jug, but with a noisy sound above her head, a grey owl slapped into the jug in Hermione's arms, splashing milk on her face. "Errol!" Ron shouted when he saw the owl in the milk jug, and pulled it out by its claws soaked in milk. Errol collapsed on the table, his legs dangling in the air, and a red envelope soaked in milk was still in his mouth. Hermione, who was splashed with milk, wanted to get angry, but after seeing the red envelope, she closed her mouth and looked at Ron with sympathy. Hermione, who loved reading, had seen this kind of red envelope in a book, and she knew that Ron was going to be unlucky. "Oh, no," Ron wailed when he saw the red envelope. Harry asked, "What happened?" Ron said weakly, "My mother sent me a howler." "You'd better open it, Ron," Neville advised. "It's even worse if you don't open it. My grandmother sent me one once, but I ignored it. The result was horrible." Hearing Neville's words, Ron seemed to think of something and shuddered. Harry looked at the horrified expressions of the others and asked puzzledly, "What is a howler?" Before everyone could explain Harry's confusion, smoke had begun to come out of the 4 corners of the howler. Ron stretched out his trembling hands and carefully tore open the envelope. Neville, Hermione and Irina on the side quickly covered their ears. A roar like an explosion came out of the envelope. This huge sound seemed to overturn the roof. The whole hall was filled with Mrs. Weasley's roar. Even Lin, who was far away at the Slytherin table, subconsciously cast his eyes over after hearing the thunderous roar. "Ronald Weasley, you actually stole the car. I wouldn't be surprised if they fired you. I'll see how I deal with you. You probably never thought about how your father and I felt when we found out the car was gone." Mrs. Weasley's roar made the plates and spoons on the table clang. All the little wizards in the hall turned around and looked at Ron, who was curled up in his chair with only his red hair exposed. "Your father was so ashamed that he almost died after receiving Dumbledore's letter last night. We worked hard to raise you, but we didn't expect you to do such a thing. You and Harry almost lost your lives. It's so infuriating. Your father will be investigated at work. It's all your fault. If you don't behave yourself, we will take you back immediately." Mrs. Weasley's roar finally stopped, but her voice was still buzzing in Ron's ears. The red envelope that had fallen from Ron's hand to the ground burned and curled up into ashes. "I'm done." Ron held his head, feeling socially dead. Irina reached out and patted Ron's shoulder through Hermione. "My condolences." Harry, who was standing by, did not speak. Although his name was not mentioned in the yelling letter, he was still so guilty that he could not eat. The first class in the morning was the herbology class. When Irina came to the greenhouse outside the herbology class, she found Lockhart walking with Professor Sprout. Professor Sprout did not seem to be interested in Lockhart. She said with a sullen look, "Today we will go to the 3rd greenhouse." After hearing Professor Sprout say where the class would be held today, Irina quickly left Harry and the others, bypassed the team, and was the first to slip into the 3rd greenhouse that Professor Sprout mentioned. Just kidding. She did not want to be carried away by Lockhart's conspicuous bag like Harry. When Irina entered the 3rd greenhouse and found a good seat, she looked at the door and saw Harry being carried aside by Lockhart to be lectured, pretending. When Harry returned to the greenhouse, Professor Sprout had already started today's class. We are going to report the mandrakes today. Who can tell me what the characteristics of mandrakes are? Hermione immediately raised her hand, and after getting Professor Sprout's permission, she answered, Mandra, also known as mandrake root, is the raw material of a powerful restorative agent, used to restore people who have been transformed or cursed to their original state. Professor Sprout was very happy to give Gryffindor 10 points, and then told him that the crying of mandrakes has the characteristic of fatal lethality. Everyone, please pay attention. The mandrakes here are still very young, and what we have to do is to report these young mandrakes. Professor Sprout pointed to about 100 mandrake seedlings lined up not far away. These mandrake seedlings are green with purple and look very weak. At Professor Sprout's request, everyone put on earmuffs, and Irina also reminded Neville to check whether his earmuffs were worn properly, so that Neville would not faint when he heard the crying of mandrakes like in the original book. Although the crying of the mandrake seedlings is not fatal, it is still very harmful to wizards. When Professor Sprout gave an order and everyone pulled out the mandrake seedlings, most of the little wizards screamed. Of course, no one could hear the screams under the effect of earmuffs. It was not a grass root that was pulled out of the soil. Instead, it looked like a very ugly baby, and the leaves grew on the head of this baby. Its skin was light green with spots on it. The mandrakes in the hands of these little wizards were obviously shouting at the top of their voices. Ha! Irina said softly, and she found that the mandrake seedling in her hand that she pulled up did not cry and make a fuss like the mandrake seedlings in the hands of others, but looked at her very quietly and curiously. Irina was a little confused. Why didn't this mandrake cry like the mandrakes in the hands of other little wizards? Exclamation mark. Hermione, lend me your mandrake. Irina signaled Hermione with her eyes, and took the mandrake in her hand. Surprisingly, the mandrake in Hermione's hand, which was originally crying and kicking its legs, stopped crying and began to look at Irina curiously, after being caught in Irina's hand. On the contrary, the very quiet mandrake in Irina's hand also began to cry and make a fuss, after being taken by Hermione. Could it be that in addition to my affinity with ice element, I'm also compatible with plants? Irina was a little surprised. She looked at the mandrake in her hand, and said to herself. At this time, the Botricle King crawled out of her backpack. She covered her ears with two branch-like fingers, and then rubbed Irina with her head. Maybe, it's the affinity between plants and animals. Irina glanced at Kingd on her shoulder and thought so. Give Irina a boost. Actually, Irina's affinity for magical animals was originally set, but later I thought it was still far inferior to Len's alchemy, so I added an affinity for magical plants. After all, Chinese biting cabbage and poisonous tentacles are no joke. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 The Pigeon House Collapses. Irina was very happy about her new ability. She finally understood why, when she saw the group of Botricles in the woods of the Scandinavian mountains that day, they did not hide after seeing the wizard as recorded in the book, but instead looked at her curiously. After she fed these Botricles, King took the initiative to follow her. It turned out that she had a special talent for attracting animals and plants. Irina thought so and happily stuffed the mandrake in her hand into the new soil pot. When the mandrake in Hermione's hand saw that Irina did not plant herself, but planted the mandrake that originally belonged to Hermione, it collapsed and struggled in various ways, and Hermione was so scared that she quickly stuffed it into the soil pot. Mandrake lava. I was here first. After the mandrake lava was stuffed into the soil pot, it finally stopped struggling, which made Hermione feel relieved. Poor mandrake. Because Irina didn't plant it, it was so angry that it broke down and cried and made a fuss. How pitiful. Hermione patted the soil on the soil pot and finished her work with satisfaction. After this herbology class, Irina looked at the poisonous tentacles behind Professor Sprout curiously. After learning that she had a high affinity for plants, she was no longer as shy as before about dangerous magical plants like poisonous tentacles. However, just when Irina was about to go forward to explore, she was pulled away by Hermione. Go back and take a shower. The next class is Transfiguration. Irina, you don't want to go to Professor McGonagall's class dirty, Hermione said. Irina was startled and quickly followed Hermione back to the castle. You know, the interval between the two big classes in the morning is not long, so it is quite enough for boys to take a shower, but this time is a bit tight for girls. Professor McGonagall's course was not difficult. Irina, who had a high talent for transfiguration, completed the requirements of Professor McGonagall's course on her first try, which earned Gryffindor another 5 points. The first class in the afternoon was Lockhart's Defense Against the Dark Arts class. Irina found that every defense against the Dark Arts class of Lockhart on Hermione's schedule was circled with a heart. Poor kid, you don't know how you will collapse when you find out that you have failed. Irina looked at Hermione with pity, which made Hermione feel puzzled. Soon, the Defense Against the Dark Arts class began. Lockhart walked into the classroom. Irina and Hermione sat in the front row of the classroom, while Harry and Ron sat in the back. In fact, Irina also wanted to sit in the back with Harry and the others, but Hermione said that good girlfriends should share happiness, so she pulled her to the first row. At this time, under Hermione's excited eyes that were about to faint, Lockhart walked into the classroom. He smiled confidently, revealing a touch of white teeth. Lockhart said, I, Gilderoy Lockhart, 3rd Class Order of Merlin, honorary member of the Dark Arts Defense League, and 5-time winner of the Most Charming Smile Award from Wizard Weekly, but I never mentioned that. I don't drive away the ghost of Wanlon with a smile. After Lockhart finished speaking, he glanced at the little wizards in the classroom, and at this moment, he found that Irina's desk in the first row was empty. My classmate, what's your name? Where are your textbooks? Lockhart came over and asked. Irina Lowell. Sorry, Professor, I forgot to bring it, Irina said helplessly. Before Lockhart's true face was exposed, it was undoubtedly an unwise choice to confront him directly, and it might even make her the target of Lockhart's little fans. She didn't buy Lockhart's book, and originally wanted to hide behind to avoid it, but was pulled to the first row by Hermione. Hermione also looked at her with some confusion. Irina didn't seem like the kind of person who forgot to bring a book. It's okay, Miss Lowell, remember to bring it next time. After all, I always forgive some beautiful ladies, don't I? Seeing Irina's embarrassed face, Lockhart showed his white teeth again, and said with a smile. After walking back to his original position, Lockhart announced, next, I will give everyone a paper, and do a small test. Don't be afraid, I just want to see how well you read, and how much you understand. After getting her own paper, Irina looked at the questions that filled 3 pages. 1. What is Gilderoy Lockhart's favorite color? 2. What is Gilderoy Lockhart's secret ambition? 3. What do you think is Gilderoy Lockhart's greatest achievement so far? 54. When is Gilderoy Lockhart's birthday? What is his ideal birthday gift? Looking at the densely packed questions related to Lockhart, Irina fell silent again. After half an hour, Lockhart collected the papers and began to correct them on the spot. When picking up the papers, Lockhart immediately pulled out Irina's paper and said with a smile, okay, Miss Lowell, although you forgot to bring your textbook today, I think you should have read my book carefully. Let me see how many points you can get. Hearing Lockhart's words, Irina seemed to have a bad premonition. She covered her face and buried her head in her arms. It's over. I'm going to die. Just as Irina tried to bury herself like an ostrich, Lockhart's voice rang out in the classroom. Why did you say my favorite color is jelly pink? That color should only be liked by girls, right? Haven't you read A Year with the XZ Snowman carefully? I mentioned that my favorite color is lilac. What? Why did you say that my secret ambition is to use my own series of magic water to transplant hair on you know whose bald head? The last question, you said that my ideal birthday gift is Merlin's fishnet stockings. If you really read my book, you should be able to see in chapter 12 of Wandering with Werewolves that my ideal birthday gift is all magical and non-magical people living in harmony. I have clearly mentioned that. Lockhart read the questions one by one. When he got to the last question, he was almost furious. Among the 54 questions, the only one that Irina got right was how many times has Gilderoy Lockhart won the Which Weekly Most Charming Smile award, and the answer to this question was what Lockhart mentioned when he just introduced himself. In addition to this question, Irina would give some strange answers to almost every question, such as the mysterious man brand 2-hole electrical socket that Gilderoy Lockhart had received as a gift from a werewolf. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. Thank you for your support. In addition, please ask for investment. As long as you read for 10 minutes on the day of the starting point, you can automatically invest. After the investment is successful, you will be given book coins when the book is put on the shelf. You just need to open this book and hang up for 10 minutes. It's not a big deal. Please. Chapter 97 Icefield. So, you haven't read my book at all, right, Miss Lowell? Lockhart looked at Irina and asked. Facing the gaze of the whole classroom, Irina had to lie and say that her book was stolen. The narcissistic Lockhart believed this obvious lie. He nodded and said, yes, who doesn't like Gilderoy Lockhart's books? Maybe some little thief admires me too much, but can't afford my books, so he finally set his sights on poor Miss Lowell. It seems that being admired is also a mistake. Lockhart closed his eyes, put his hands on his head, and brushed his hair, pretending to be lonely in a high position. When Lockhart opened his eyes, he saw Irina's sad expression. He believed that she was sad because she lost her book, and thought that she was also one of his little fans. So, Lockhart looked at Irina and said, as your defense against the dark arts professor, after careful consideration, I have decided to give you a set of my books, Miss Lowell. Irina said helplessly, thank you so much, Professor. Little did she know that her sadness at the moment had nothing to do with Lockhart's books. Irina's sadness was purely because she was socially dead in the whole classroom. Damn Lockhart, why did he read out the answers to every question he asked? Irina wanted to cry, but had no tears. Lockhart waved his wand. Although his magic level might not be as good as that of a 5th year wizard, he could still cast the simplest levitation spell. A set of Lockhart's books floated up from his podium and landed on Irina's desk. After giving Irina his own books, Lockhart began to mark other people's papers. In the end, only Hermione got full marks in the whole classroom, which made Lockhart add 10 points to Gryffindor. Now, let's get back to business. Be careful, my job is to teach you to resist the most evil things known to the wizarding world. You will face the most horrible things in this classroom. But remember, as long as I'm here, you will not be harmed. I only ask you to remain calm. Lockhart bent down and took out a large cage covered with a cloth from behind the podium and placed it on the table. I must ask you not to scream, that will anger them, Lockhart said, and opened the cover. A group of ugly elves appeared in this cage. These elves were iron blue, about 8 inches tall, with small pointed faces, and very sharp and piercing voices. Lockhart looked proud and announced, not bad, the Cornish elves that have just been caught. Seeing these elves, the boys in the classroom couldn't help but sneer. The most horrible thing! Exclamation mark. That's it! Exclamation mark. This is probably what the little wizards thought in their hearts. You know, 2 years ago, when Professor Green was the professor of defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts, the first lesson he taught to first-year students was about the dangerous level XXXXX Acromanthus. Although Irina had not attended Professor Green's class, she had heard about it from her seniors. Compared with the dangerous level XXXXX Acromanthus, the Cornish pixies were nothing. But Lockhart said that they were the most evil creatures in the world, which was really ridiculous. Seeing the little wizards looking down on them, Lockhart was a little annoyed. He just said, well, let's see how you deal with them, Lockhart said, and directly opened the cage door. The Cornish pixies that had escaped from the cage were like wild horses that had broken free from their reins, jumping up and down in the entire classroom, and they kept causing damage. Some Cornish elves smashed the windows, scattering broken glass all over the back row of the classroom. Some Cornish elves grabbed the ink bottle on the little wizard's desk and splashed it everywhere in the classroom. Some Cornish elves tore the pictures on the wall and the waste bin on the ground into pieces, and even some little wizard school bags and textbooks were thrown out by them. The little wizards in the classroom were only in the 2nd grade, and their spellcasting ability was extremely limited. Even if the Cornish elves were not a big threat, they were not easy to deal with now. Perhaps these little wizards all had the ability to fight the Cornish elves alone, but facing the attack of these Cornish elves, they had to hide under the table. At this time, Lockhart saw that the situation was almost done, so he planned to control these Cornish elves. He just waved his wand and shouted loudly, "Pesky pixie pesto me." However, before he could completely release the spell, a Cornish elf directly snatched the wand from his hand and threw his wand out of the window. In the first row of the classroom, Irina and Hermione kept using spells to repel the Cornish elves who dared to attack them. After these Cornish elves found that Irina and Hermione were not easy to mess with, they turned around to bully other little wizards, which formed a vacuum zone without Cornish elves around Irina and Hermione. Icefield. Looking at the Cornish elves making trouble, Irina was also a little annoyed. She pointed her wand at the ground and shouted. I saw an ice blue halo released from the wand, and then continued to expand in all directions. All the Cornish elves affected by this ice blue halo were frozen into ice sculptures, and the space inside the halo was also affected by the magic of the ice element, and the temperature dropped rapidly. In a few seconds, the entire defense against the dark arts classroom seemed to have turned into an ice storage. Even the little wizards who were not attacked by Irina's spells felt cold all over. After all, the temperature in the classroom is probably below -10 degrees Celsius. This spell, called Icefield, is a variant developed by Irina when she was studying the freezing spell, and her idea came from the magic that was like the Eternal Ice Palace that was accidentally released in Ollivander's one-shot that day. The original freezing spell was a single target control spell that was emitted in the form of a beam of light, and Irina changed the way it was released to release it in the form of an energy wave, so that the original single target attack spell became a ranged group control spell. If I can reach a higher level of magic in the future, I'm afraid I can really release the Eternal Ice Palace that appeared in Ollivander's one-shot that day at will. Irina thought to herself as she looked at the Cornish elves around her who turned into ice sculptures and fell. Please recommend, reward and monthly tickets. Please invest. If you hang up here for 10 minutes, you can automatically invest successfully. You can get free book coins for investment. Chapter 98, Speechless Lockhart. When releasing the ice field, Irina intentionally or unintentionally did not limit the release of ice elemental magic towards Lockhart, which caused Lockhart to almost turn into an ice sculpture like those Cornish elves. At this time, the bell rang. These little wizards could not stand the low temperature in the classroom and ran out of the classroom. Sorry, Professor, I may not have controlled my magic well. Please wait here for a while. The freezing effect will be lifted after the magic dissipates, Irina said to Lockhart with an apologetic face. Then, she pulled Hermione, who looked puzzled, out of the classroom. Irina, you can obviously remove the curse for Professor Lockhart directly. After leaving the classroom, Hermione looked at Irina in confusion. Irina spread her hands and said, he has so many adventure experiences, he must be a wizard with a high level of magic. I'm afraid he will remove the curse himself as soon as we leave. Why should I bother? If I really remove the curse for him, it means I don't trust him, understand? Hermione looked enlightened. She nodded vigorously and said, yes, with Professor Lockhart's unfathomable strength, it must be just a matter of waving his hand to remove the curse for himself. So, the two of them returned to the Gryffindor common room, talking and laughing. Only the ice sculpture of Lockhart was left, shivering in the classroom full of air conditioning. The next day, the first class of the morning was the defense against the dark arts class for the third year Slytherins and Gryffindors. Lin came to the classroom, he went straight to the last row, and flipped through the alchemy books. In Lin's opinion, he couldn't learn anything real from Lockhart anyway, so it was better to read his own alchemy books. Not long after, Lockhart came to the classroom. Lockhart's appearance at this time attracted Lin's attention. In this hot summer, Lockhart was wrapped in a thick fleece, wearing fleece gloves and a hood. A string of snot flowed out of Lockhart's nose, accompanied by the occasional sneezing sound. Lockhart's two ears were emitting thick smoke like a steam train. Obviously, Lockhart had just taken a stimulant to treat a cold. Seeing Lockhart's strange appearance, Lin couldn't help but feel a little confused. At this time, Lockhart on the podium was secretly unlucky. He also heard the conversation between Irina and Hermione when they left the classroom yesterday. Lockhart originally wanted to ask Irina for help to remove the curse, but after learning about Irina's idea, he gave up asking for help due to his self-esteem. In the end, he froze in this classroom for a full 2 hours before Professor McGonagall, who was passing by, lifted the curse with a stop curse. But even so, he still caught a cold, and it was a very serious cold. After all, no one can be healthy and not get sick after being frozen into an ice sculpture for 2 hours. I, Gilderoy Lockhart, HU, Order of Merlin, HU, 3rd Class Medal, Dark Arts, HU, Honorary Member of the Defense League, HU, HU, HU. Lockhart wanted to introduce himself, but he sneezed several times while speaking, and his speech was interrupted by flying snot. Helplessly, Lockhart had to give up promoting his great achievements and began to distribute test papers to the young wizards while sneezing. Looking at the parchment in front of him, that seemed to be stained with snot, Lin En's eyes flashed with disgust. He moved to the side and moved away from the parchment. It was obviously you who did it, but I'm the one who got disgusted. Lin was somewhat helpless, thinking of Lockhart's current condition, and the fact that the only class Lockhart attended yesterday was the Defense Against the Dark Arts class for the second year Gryffindor and Slytherin. Lin could already guess who was the culprit for Lockhart's illness. In the next half hour, Lockhart's sneezing on the podium did not stop, which made Lin uneasy even when reading the alchemy book. Half an hour later, Lockhart walked down the podium and began to collect the papers. When he collected the last row, Lockhart was stunned and asked, "Mr. Rowe, why are all your papers blank?" Lin flipped through the alchemy book and said concisely, "I didn't read it, I don't know." Seeing Lin's as if it was a matter of course, Lockhart was stunned. Although it was his first time teaching, he had never seen such a student who was so confident, even though he had not read any books. Lockhart asked, "Why didn't you read my book? Don't you know that today is my Defense Against the Dark Arts class?" Lin spread his hands and said innocently, "Because I didn't buy it." At this moment, not only Lockhart, but the whole classroom fell into silence. This time, Lin played a key group control. Lockhart felt that he had never been so speechless in his life. He asked, "Why didn't you buy the book? I remember that the list of Hogwarts clearly stated that these books of mine are the textbooks for this year's Defense Against the Dark Arts class." Lowell, who was in the last class, said that it was okay to lose the book. As a qualified idol, it was very reasonable for him to give a set of his own books to the little fangirl. But this Rowell didn't even try to hide it. Lin put down the alchemy book in his hand, looked at Lockhart, and said, "I would like to ask Professor Lockhart, why are those novels used as textbooks for the Defense Against the Dark Arts class? I don't think they seem to help us improve our Defense Against the Dark Arts knowledge. Could it be that Professor Lockhart, you came to Hogwarts to teach, just to promote your own books?" As Lin's words fell, the little wizards in the classroom all turned their eyes to Lin and Lockhart. Some of Lockhart's diehard fans looked at Lin with anger, thinking that Lin should not insult their rival like this, while the boys and some smart girls began to think, and they looked at Lockhart with questioning eyes. Lockhart's mind turned rapidly, and soon, he thought of a speech. Lockhart said righteously, "Mr. Rawle, you shouldn't slander a professor like this. I have my reasons for choosing these books as teaching materials. I will integrate the knowledge of these textbooks into my courses, so that everyone can experience the beauty of Defense Against the Dark Arts in person." Before Lockhart could speak, Lin interrupted expressionlessly, "Sorry, Professor Lockhart, I would like to ask, what you call integrating the knowledge of the textbooks and experiencing it in person? Do you mean performing situational dramas in the classroom?" Lockhart was stunned. "Shit, how did you know?" Exclamation mark. Please recommend, reward and monthly votes. Thank you for your support. In addition, please ask for investment. As long as you read for 10 minutes on the day of starting, you can automatically invest. After the investment is successful, you will be given book coins when the book is put on the shelf. You only need to open this book and hang up for 10 minutes. It's not a problem. Please. Chapter 99 The Final Test. At this time, Lockhart was in a dilemma. As Lin said, his method of integrating textbooks into the classroom was to let the little wizards come on stage, to cooperate with him to play the various roles in the book, and perform situational dramas for the little wizards. After yesterday's defense against the dark arts class, Lockhart fully realized that he had no ability to deal with those dark creatures, so he planned to put the class in his home field, that is, in his own books, to avoid his own insufficient magic level. After being exposed, Lockhart no longer had the mind to entangle with Lin. He hastily perfunctorily said, "The professor naturally has his own ideas. Mr. All doesn't need to worry. It doesn't matter if there is no my book, but it's a pity that Mr. All can't fully experience the beauty of the defense against the dark arts class like other little wizards." Seeing Lockhart retreat, Lin smiled and didn't continue talking, which was considered to give Lockhart a way out. Soon, the bell rang, and Lockhart ran away from the classroom. Lin En shook his head, put his alchemy books into his backpack, and then stood up and left. Unlike Irina, who was only good at magic, Lin En now had extremely high attainments in both magic and alchemy. He no longer needed to endure and develop, like he did in the first and second grades. After all, in terms of magic level, he could kill an elite aura alone, and in terms of alchemy, no one in the entire British magic world could match him except Professor Dumbledore. Even in the French magic world, which is rich in alchemists, Lin En is enough to be ranked in the first echelon. Therefore, facing a guy like Lockhart who deceived the world and stole his reputation, Lin En didn't need to pretend to be an ordinary student, like he did when facing Quirrell, and waste his time on such useless classes. With this time, it would be better to read 1 or 2 more alchemy books. Soon, Lin En returned to the Slytherin dormitory. The Malfoy trio was not in the dormitory at this time, because the Malfoy trio and Lin were not in the same grade, so their course schedules were also different. For example, Lin had no classes at this time, but the Malfoy trio had to go to the underground classroom to take potions. However, this also had certain advantages. Lin could find out where Irina and others were going through Malfoy's class schedule. After all, Gryffindors of the same grade often took classes with Slytherins. It's time. Lin took out an exquisite alchemical wooden box from the drawer of his desk. This alchemical wooden box was the box he specially made before school started. There were 2 locks, one cold and one hot, hanging on the place where the box was opened. After a year, both Lin and Irina had already believed in their hearts that the other was also a time traveler. But the two had always kept it a secret, and no one had spoken out to expose the other's identity as a time traveler. This kind of companionship relationship between the 2 sides lasted for a whole year. Now, Lin decided to take the initiative to break this invisible barrier. As for the alchemical wooden box in Lin's hand, it was Lin's last test of Irina. Lin left the dormitory with the box and headed towards the Gryffindor common room and the Gryffindor tower. When Lin arrived outside the portrait of the fat lady, she stopped a 4th or 5th grade Gryffindor girl and said, "Senior, can you help deliver this box to Irina from Gryffindor?" The Gryffindor girl was stunned when she saw Lin and asked, "I remember you. You are Lin Rowell, right? At the end of year banquet last year, Professor Dumbledore gave both Lin and Irina extra points, and the story of the 2 of them jointly repelling Voldemort's remnant soul was also widely spread among the 2nd year and above young wizards, so the Gryffindor girl recognized Lin. After Lin En admitted it, the Gryffindor girl took the alchemy box from Lin En's hand and nodded, saying, "Don't worry, I will pass it to Irina." After handing over the alchemy box, Lin En returned to the Slytherin dormitory to practice alchemy, intending to review the alchemy skills he learned from Teacher Green during the summer vacation. For Lin En now, he has plenty of time. This year, Lin En is already a 3rd year student at Hogwarts and needs to take elective courses to continue his studies. Lin En does not intend to sign up for all 12 courses like Hermione did. In his opinion, it is better to spend more time specializing in a few abilities than to study widely without learning any of them thoroughly. Therefore, in addition to the 7 required courses of transfiguration, herbology, defense against the dark arts, potions, charms, astronomy, and history of magic, Lin En only took the ancient runes course. For Lin En, an alchemist, the ancient runes course at Hogwarts is no different from a self-study class. After all, the knowledge in the ancient runes course was what Lin En needed when he entered alchemy 2 years ago, and it had long been deeply imprinted in his mind. Even Professor Bathsheba Baburin, who was responsible for teaching the ancient runes course, probably didn't know as many ancient runes as Lin En. Compared with other young wizards who took many elective courses, Lin En didn't need to run up and down the classrooms in the castle every day. The existence of elective courses affected the professor's class schedule, which reduced the number of weekly class hours for the original 7 required courses. The reduction in courses gave Lin En plenty of time to study alchemy every week. As time passed, it was soon time for lunch. The young wizards went to the hall for lunch, and after lunch, they returned to their respective common rooms for lunch. Irina reported the Gryffindor password to the fat lady's portrait, and then took Hermione's hand and walked into the Gryffindor common room. Just as Irina was about to return to the dormitory, a senior Gryffindor student stopped her and said, "Lowell, this is something that Lua asked me to pass on to you." As she spoke, the Gryffindor student handed the alchemical wooden box to Irina. "Is this what Lua gave me? Okay, thank you, senior sister." Irina hurriedly thanked him and then looked at the alchemical wooden box in her hand. She was still smiling at first, but after seeing the 5 strange yet familiar fonts on the alchemical wooden box, she trembled all over and was shocked. On the front of the alchemical wooden box, golden lines outlined 5 beautiful fonts, which Hermione, Harry and Ron could not understand, but Irina was very familiar with. These were 5 Chinese characters, and these 5 characters were BJ Olympics. Chapter 100, Be honest with each other, and reach the same destination through different paths. After seeing these 5 Chinese characters, Irina understood everything. Just as she had guessed before, Lin En was indeed a time traveler, and like her, he came from the ancient East. However, they had clearly known each other for a year, so why did Lin En choose to expose himself? Exclamation mark. Irina was thinking about a lot of things, and she looked at the alchemy wooden box in her hand, and was a little overwhelmed. She understood that these 5 Chinese characters were the key to opening the 2 locks, but once she opened the 2 locks, it was equivalent to Irina taking the initiative to tell Lin En that yes, I'm also a time traveler. To be honest, she was not ready to be honest with the other party, because she was not sure what the other party was thinking. Facing someone who came from the same place as herself and had similar special abilities, how did Lin En see her? Exclamation mark. A fellow countryman who could become a good friend? Or a hidden threat that needed to be eliminated? Exclamation mark. Thinking of this, Irina's lips turned pale. "Irina, what's wrong with you?" Seeing that Irina looked strange, Hermione shook her and asked anxiously. Looking at her best friend's anxious eyes, Irina shook her head and said reluctantly, "I'm fine. I want to go back to the dormitory alone. You can chat with Harry and the others." After that, Irina went to the direction of the girls' dormitory. Although Hermione was a little confused, she still gave Irina her own space. She watched Harry and Ron playing wizard chess absent-mindedly in the Gryffindor common room. At this time, Irina had returned to the dormitory. Although it was lunchtime, most of the little wizards in Gryffindor would choose to spend a lunch break in the common room, so there was no one else in the dormitory except Irina. Irina placed the alchemical wooden box on her desk and looked at the alchemical wooden box in front of her with a complicated expression. She didn't know whether she should open it or not. If she opened it, how should she face Lin En later? Exclamation mark. Never mind. It's only a matter of time. Irina chose to break the jar and throw it away. Anyway, what is coming will come, and the ending will not be changed, whether the alchemical wooden box is opened or not. Irina turned her attention to the 5 Chinese characters again, and thought about the clues to unlock the lock. After a while, Irina hesitated and picked up the slightly hot combination lock, and adjusted the scrambled Arabic numerals on the combination lock to the order of 2008. Click. The combination lock shook slightly and opened. Sure enough, Irina was refreshed. It seemed that her thinking was not wrong. She picked up another combination lock that exuded cold air, and adjusted the scrambled Arabic numerals on the combination lock to the order of 2022. Click. The second lock was also opened. Irina opened the alchemical wooden box with trepidation, and looked inside the wooden box. A pendant that shone with golden light under the light was fixed in the center of the wooden box, and a letter written on parchment was pressed under the pendant. Irina picked up the pendant. The pendant was made of crystal, and inside the crystal seemed to be sealed with a golden liquid that exuded pleasant magical fluctuations. Felixie. Irina recognized the liquid sealed inside the crystal. Yes, this Felixie crystal pendant was exactly what Lin En exchanged for a defective magic forbidden wand that failed to alchemize from a French potion master on the trading platform of French Magic Gold Street during the summer vacation of his first grade. Although there was only a small spoonful of Felixie sealed inside the crystal, the value of the Felixie and the crystal pendant made it a particularly suitable gift. Then, Irina picked up the envelope that was originally pressed under the crystal pendant. The letter was written by Lin En. I think that, if you are willing to open this box, it means that you have made sufficient preparations. I will wait for you in the abandoned classroom where the mirror of their eyes was placed last year after the dinner. I hope to wait for you to come, of course, if you are willing. Irina bit her lip lightly. She certainly remembered the room where the mirror of their eyes was placed last year. From the few words in Lin En's letter, Irina understood that he had no ill will towards her, which made Irina very happy. After all, it is absolutely a wonderful thing to be able to meet your fellow countrymen in another world, isn't it? Exclamation mark. Although they have experienced different things, have had a different life, and traveled through time for different reasons, but they all came here in the end and had a chance to choose a new life. This is wonderful, isn't it? Exclamation mark. Different paths, same destination. Irina carefully put on the crystal pendant that contained the Felixie, and a smile appeared on her face again. Back in the common room, Hermione looked at Irina in surprise. She noticed the pendant on Irina's chest. Irina, where did you get this pendant? Irina smiled, leaned on Hermione, and said comfortably, a friend gave it to me. Hermione chuckled and said, is it from Senior O? It's in that wooden box. How do you know? Irina was stunned. Hermione said helplessly, you just went in with the wooden box, given by Senior O, and when you came out, you had an extra pendant on your body. Anyone can guess it. Irina was not convinced and argued, I bet Harry and Ron can't guess it. Huh. Harry and Ron, who were suddenly cooed not far away, looked over with a confused look on their faces, not understanding what they were talking about. Seeing her two silly sons, Hermione slapped her forehead. In the two classes in the afternoon, Irina was much more active than usual. She answered questions continuously and earned more than 20 points for Gryffindor again. The time for the dinner soon arrived, but when Irina arrived at the hall, she found that Lin En, who had no classes in the afternoon, had already finished dinner and left. The food should not be missed. Although Irina was a little impatient, she still filled her stomach honestly. Hermione, you guys go back first. I have something to go out for a while, and will be back later. After filling her stomach, Irina said to Hermione and the other two. Harry and Ron were not suspicious. They were in a hurry to go back to the Gryffindor common room to play wizard chess. Hermione looked at Irina strangely, and then left with Harry and the other two. After watching Harry and the other two leave the hall, Irina walked towards the abandoned classroom where the mirror of their eyes was placed last year. Although she followed Harry to the abandoned classroom, Irina deliberately memorized the route along the way, so she easily found the way and came to the outside of the abandoned classroom. After taking a look at the open door of the abandoned classroom, Irina swallowed her saliva and walked inside. P.S. The next chapter will be the chapter that will be put on the shelves. Please pre-order. Please pre-order. Please pre-order. Please, please. Brothers, this book will be put on the shelves at 12 noon today, but I will update it in advance in the early morning. Today, you can read the free chapters, and I will start charging tomorrow. I hope everyone will support me. In the future, I will update twice a day under normal circumstances. If the average subscription can reach 500, I will update 3 times a day or even more. Thank you for your support. I hope everyone can continue to read. After all, one chapter is only 1 dime, and the author may only get 4 cents, which is not enough to buy a bag of spicy noodles. It only costs $6 to read this book for a month. Please support me. Thank you. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.